Chapter 1807. Everyone in the ethereal hall was shocked before they fell into a long period of silence. How could this be? How could this be? As the school head, shouldn't Nan Suhuai do things impartially? How could he give away the entire Lingxiao College so openly just to support Shanghaiyu? Wouldn't the other elders and students of Lingxiao College object to this? Nan Suhuai's actions aren't too appropriate, right? Indeed. Even if Shanghaiyu is his disciple, he shouldn't dote on her like this. How would the other students in the academy think of this? I've heard that Nan Suhuai dotes on his disciple a lot, and it seems like he really lives up to his reputation, as expected of the school head. He's indeed generous. I wonder if Lingxiao College will be as peaceful as before in the future. All kinds of discussions sounded like a tidal wave. Even though some of them didn't say anything, it was clear that they weren't optimistic about this matter. After all, Lingxiao College wasn't a place where Nan Suhuai's family could dominate. Upon hearing those words, Nan Suhuai raised his eyebrows and smiled. You don't have to worry about this. He turned around, and even though he was smiling, his gaze was as sharp as a knife as it swept across those who spoke rudely. Everyone fell silent for a moment. However, Nan Suhuai's smile widened. Previously, when Lingxiao College was in danger, it was all thanks to you, who risked her life to turn the tide that the entire academy was saved. The verdant jade token had never been given to anyone who wasn't an elder. Today we've made an exception and given it to you, and her husband. This was a decision that all of the elders in the academy had agreed to. Why do you seem to be unhappy when our people don't have any objections? Who are you unhappy for? Why don't you think that anyone will care? Since it's a decision made by a person, it's not up to outsiders like you to comment on it. Even though Nan Suhuai didn't say those words out loud, his expression conveyed his thoughts very vividly. Many people felt embarrassed and they quickly averted their gazes. However, Nan Suhuai didn't seem to be satisfied yet. One more thing, I'd like to remind you all that I, Nan Suhuai, have only accepted one disciple in my entire life. Everyone suddenly thought of something and looked at Nan Suhuai in disbelief. What was the meaning of this? Is he planning to pass the position of dean to Xuanhuan? Yes. If he didn't have this intention, why would he be so protective of Xuanhuan and even give them such a big gift? Furthermore, the other elders of Lingxiao College were all in favor of the green jade token. Could it be that they had already decided? Many people began to feel uneasy. If Xuanhuan really became the dean of Lingxiao College, the situation would be very different. Even if she didn't have any roots in the Divine Ruins world, Lingxiao College was an absolute colossus. If she really became the principal, then her position in the entire Divine Ruins world would be greatly improved. Admittedly, some of the first-rate families were rich in resources and had many experts. They could cultivate outstanding juniors on their own. They didn't need to send their children to the Yuntian Tower, and they didn't need to worry about their relationship with the Yuntian Tower. However, this was only a small portion of the families. Most of the families and clans still hoped that their juniors could enter Lingxiao College to cultivate and become experts. Then, didn't this mean that they would have to treat Xuanhuan with respect in the future? Many people had complicated expressions on their faces when they realized this. In fact, many of them didn't think highly of Xuanhuan in the past. Even if she was talented and powerful, she was too weak without the support of her family. It was as if she would fall if the wind blew. But now, in front of them was the Yuntian Tower, and behind them was the Lingxiao College. With these two forces joining forces, how could the others compete? The atmosphere in the main hall became strange. Many of those who were tempted to make a move had stopped thinking about it. Nan Suhuai revealed a satisfied expression. This was the effect he wanted. They wanted to bully you, Dream on. Both of you have given us such a big gift. Our gift is a little inferior. Xuanhuan said with a smile. Although he said that, his expression was magnanimous and natural, which made people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. His temperament alone was better than many of the so-called nobles in the hall. Rong Xiu said with a smile. Father-in-law is the person closest to you, for you to travel such a long distance to come here, this is already the best gift for us. The word father-in-law was addressed to two people, Xuanhuan and Chuning. Some of the people in the hall began to ponder. Just by looking at Rong Xiu's attitude towards the two of them, one could tell that he valued you, a lot. It was said that he had even invited the princess's friends and subordinates. It was rare to see someone so thoughtful. Xuanhuan took out a wooden box. The wooden box was rectangular and black. There was a faint pressure coming from it. It was obvious that there was a Xian formation seal on the outside. Chu Luiyue felt a familiar wave of energy and widened his eyes in surprise. Father, this is... Open it and take a look. Xuanhuan urged with a smile. Chu Luiyue took the wooden box. The moment he held it in his hand, the seal on it was automatically removed. The energy inside it surged even more fiercely. Chu Luiyue paused for a moment. Click. The wooden box was opened. A dragon-headed scepter lay quietly inside. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. As expected, it was the Tianling scepter. Before I came here, the Tianling scepter flew out of the Langquan palace. I brought it with me. Xuanhuan explained. It belongs to you after all. Chu Luiyue suppressed the excitement in his heart and reached out to hold the Tianling scepter. Buzz. In an instant, the eyes of the dragon head on the scepter shone brightly. Almost instinctively, Chu Luiyue held her scepter and swung it down. Shwa. The sound of air being torn apart sounded. At the same time, an incomparably powerful aura descended upon the entire ethereal hall. A supremacy artifact. Everyone was once again thrown into disarray. Why was it a supremacy artifact? Could it be that the people of the Xuanhuan clan were all giving such gifts? Xuanhuan laughed heartily. This little thing still likes to stick to you. Chu Luiyue could also sense that the energy coming from the Tianling scepter seemed to be stronger than before. She had never noticed that it was a supremacy artifact before. As if seeing through her thoughts, Xuanhuan explained. This Tianling scepter is indeed a supremacy artifact that I forged a long time ago, but it's a little different from ordinary supremacy artifacts. The stronger the wielder is, the stronger the power it can unleash. In the past, your cultivation wasn't high enough, so the power you could sense and wield was limited. However, now that your cultivation has increased significantly, it's only natural that the power it wields is different. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1808. Chu Luiyue was amazed when she heard this. No wonder. She had already seen the venerable artifact, but she didn't know about it. Someone suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed. The person beside him immediately frowned. Princess, we came here today to congratulate you. Isn't it inappropriate for you to target us like this? That person was unable to withstand the might of the heaven's writ scepter, and his chi and blood surged, causing him to spit out blood. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows in surprise. I just took out the Tianling scepter and he couldn't take it? I thought that those present today were all the top experts of the Divine Ruins world. So it turns out that I misunderstood? I'm sorry. As she spoke, she immediately took out a jade bottle and asked Yanqing to pass it to her. This is the rejuvenation pill. Please take it. Yanqing respectfully took the pill with both hands and handed it over. This time, not only did the person vomit blood, but even the person who spoke almost couldn't catch his breath. You're sorry? How are you sorry? That move just now was clearly intentional. Just as that person was about to say something, Rongxiu put down the wine cup in his hand. Clang. The sound was neither loud nor soft, but it suddenly felt like a huge rock pressing down on everyone's hearts. Rongxiu looked up slightly and glanced over. His eyes were extremely calm. Today is I and yours big day. We can't see blood. Yanqing, send him out. Yes. Yanqing looked at the person who vomited blood. Please? Being stared at by Yanqing, the man subconsciously trembled. At that moment he couldn't say a single word. He forcefully swallowed the blood in his mouth, got up and left dejectedly. When he left, his footsteps were unsteady as if he hadn't recovered yet. Everyone was silent for a moment. This couple really had a tacit understanding. They thought that after listening to what they said, they wouldn't really make a scene here today. Who would have known that Xuanhuan would seek revenge for the smallest grievance? He had openly attacked her in front of so many people. But Rongxiu just let it be. It could only be said that the person who was beaten up was really unlucky. However, this act of killing the chicken to warn the monkey also caused everyone present to become vigilant. These two, he was not someone to be trifled with. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows. Only then did he put away the heaven-writ scepter, and his lips curled into an extremely faint arc. It's not bad. Our time is short. Father doesn't have anything good to give you. A few days ago, I asked Senior Xuanhuan to help me refine a pendant. I'll give it to you. Chu Ning broke the silence in the hall and handed over a palm-sized jade box. This jade box was carried by Chu Ning himself. Back in Yao Chen, this jade box was considered excellent. However, in the eyes of these people today, it was extremely ordinary. In fact, it could even be said to be somewhat crude. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, a normal one. This was the grade that they should give out. Chu Luiyue didn't care about this. He took the jade box with both hands and opened it. A small green jade gourd was strung together with a red string. There was a faint trace of red inside the jade gourd. She picked up the small jade gourd. Countless gazes fell on it. Someone couldn't help but chuckle. What is this? It was fine if the jade box's material was inferior. After all, it was just a container to hold gifts. But this jade gourd, its quality wasn't very good either. Looking at the color, it was a bit mottled. It was really ugly to the extreme. How could such a thing be given out? Didn't Xuanhuan feel embarrassed? Chu Liyue's expression was slightly serious. He stared at the jade gourd for a long time before asking, "Father, what's inside?" "That's Chuning's blood." Shenghuan Jing suddenly spoke. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Blood? So that Chuning asked Shenghuan Jing for help and put his blood in that jade gourd. That's too old-fashioned. What's the point? Oh my God, even if he doesn't have anything to give, he shouldn't be so poor, right? Giving his own blood? What is this? That's right. Even if he borrowed a gift, it would be better than this, right? If I were Shenghuan Yu, I really wouldn't be able to accept this thing. Sounds of discussion gradually rose in the main hall. Chuning's hand tightened. This was indeed the best gift that he could give Su Yang. Shenghuan Jing glanced around and suddenly laughed. I didn't know when the god's blood of the indestructible divine body became so worthless. As soon as he finished speaking, the hall suddenly became dead silent. Some people still had disdainful smiles on their faces, but their eyes were filled with shock. It looked very strange and funny. There were also people who quickly looked at Chuning. Indestructible divine body? Chuning has the indestructible divine body? That's one of the rarest divine bodies in the world. He's only a stage 4 warrior, how could— No, that's not right. Rumor has it that when he came to the Yuntian Tower half a month ago, he was only a stage 1 warrior. In such a short period of time, he actually broke through 3 stages in a row. The indestructible divine body has an extremely strong vitality. As long as there's a breath left, it can quickly recover and have a higher combat power. Chu Ning refined the god's blood and merged it into the jade gourd. Wear it and you can contact him at any time. If you encounter any trouble, just call him directly. If it's really dangerous, break the jade gourd and the god's blood will help you recover. Although it could only be used once, it was equivalent to having half an extra life. Chu Ning's current realm is not high, and the power of the god's blood is also relatively thin. During this period of time, in order to refine this drop of blood, he suffered a lot. Chu Ning quickly shook his head. No, Senior Shenghuan is exaggerating. Daddy doesn't have anything to give you. I just hope that you will be safe. Chu Liyue's nose twitched, but his lips bloomed into a smile. Thank you, Daddy. He didn't have any rare treasures, only love and passion. He didn't hesitate to give it to her. She was so lucky. Daddy, your gift is no worse than anyone else's. Everyone was silent. Needless to say, the indestructible divine body's god's blood. They didn't even think about it. Shenghuan Yu directly had it. Who didn't want to have half an extra life? Even a seemingly lowly existence like Chu Ning could actually give away such a heaven-defying treasure. What kind of luck did Shenghuan Yu have? At this moment, an announcement came from outside. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix Clan's clan leader, Yizhao, has arrived. Everyone turned around in shock. Yizhao? The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix Clan's clan leader? Why is he here? Under everyone's gaze, a tall and sturdy figure appeared outside the door. The moment he appeared, a powerful and vast aura was emitted from his body. It was so oppressive that everyone couldn't breathe. Everyone subconsciously held their breaths. Yizhao, to them he was also a legendary figure. Someone muttered in a low voice. Yizhao actually came. Is he here to cause trouble for Shenghuan Yu? Digression, continue at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1809. I've long heard that Shenghuan Yu contracted a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix and was invited to Phoenix God Mountain some time ago. Later on, I don't know how he came out. Yizhao appearing now, could it really be because of that matter? It's most likely. The Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan is so noble and arrogant. Yizhao has never interacted with the human race. Today he's here personally, so it's definitely not simple. If the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan really wants to make a move on Shenghuan Yu, the Yuntian Tower won't be able to stop them, right? Not to mention the Yuntian Tower, none of the families present could be compared to the ancient Divine Beast clan's combat power. Many people in the hall stood up at the same time. Clan leader Yizhao, nice to meet you. We've heard a lot about you. I didn't expect to meet you today. Clan leader Yizhao, Many of the people who still had some pride on their faces just now changed into eager and courteous smiles one after another. It was not difficult to hear the flattery in their words. Even though doing this would make him change too quickly and it would seem a little awkward, but who wasn't like this? Please. The person in front of them was the clan leader of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. He was the world's top expert who could reject a venerable god expert without hesitation. Who here could be compared to him? Usually, many people wanted to establish a relationship with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, but unfortunately they didn't have the connections. Now Yizhao was in front of them. How could they not seize the opportunity? This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Everyone had a strong desire to be strong. If they could establish a relationship with Yizhao, so what if others said that they were flattering, solicitous, and trying to curry favor with him? However, Yizhao completely ignored these people's greetings. His expression was cold and solemn as he strode forward. His pace was very hurried and cold wind was wrapped around him as he walked. Wherever he passed, his aura crushed. Many people felt a little embarrassed when they were ignored. But this kind of embarrassment was quickly dispelled by themselves. Wasn't Yizhao always like this? If he could greet anyone with a smile, that would be a miracle. This person is indeed the same as the rumors say, cold-faced and cold-hearted. Not only that. I heard that he's super strong and ruthless. All these years, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan is almost his sole say. Not to mention us, even their own clan members don't dare to disobey him. Do you guys smell it? That murderous and cold aura on his body? He hadn't even made a move yet, but the overflowing pressure was already so terrifying. If he really wants to make a move, I'm afraid no one here. Sky Phoenix Sky Phoenix Crimson Clan is Yizhao use it. Yizhao, Yi's clan. Under the gazes of everyone, Yizhao walked into the hall. Rongxiao stood up first with a smile on his lips. Clan leader Yizhao, long time no see. How have you been? Everyone was stunned. Rongxiao actually knows Yizhao? And judging from his tone, it seems like they have a good relationship? Could it be that he's pretending? Rongxiao was powerful and famous in the Yuntian Tower, but they had never heard of him having any contact with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Just as everyone was guessing, Yizhao nodded and said indifferently, "That's right. Everything is as usual." Many people looked at each other secretly. Does he really know Yizhao Yu? Yizhao turned and looked at Chu Luiyue. "Xuanhuan Yu." His voice was low and cold. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. It's coming. It's about to start. This time, even if the Yuntian Tower and Lingxiao College joined forces, they wouldn't be able to protect her. Congratulations to the two of you on your wedding. I received the news a little late, so I came a little late. Am I late? Yizhao asked. Almost everyone's expression froze at this moment. What did Yizhao say? Not only did he not reprimand Xuanhuan Yu, he even congratulated them on their wedding. The air in the hall seemed to have stopped flowing. All the noise suddenly disappeared, leaving only a suffocating silence. Chu Luiyue stood up and her eyes curved. How can this be? You came at the right time. Why didn't I hear that you were coming? We didn't make any preparations. Sorry for the delay. Rongxiao had already ordered someone to prepare a seat for him. His seat was naturally the innermost, closest to the two of them. Of course he was the VIP of the VIPs. Even if he sat at the top, no one would have any objections. While everyone was still in a daze, they saw a little girl suddenly appear in front of Chu Luiyue. The little girl looked to be no more than 3 or 4 years old. She was wearing a reddish-gold lotus leaf dress, and her hair was tied up in 2 round buns with golden bells. Her small face was fair and cute, and people couldn't help but reach out and pinch it. Chu Luiyue gave her a gentle push from behind. Dumpling, go and greet Yizhao. Tuanzi was also very surprised. She rushed over with her chubby feet bare. Grandpa clan leader. Her laughter was as clear as silver bells, and Yizhao's heart melted. He almost instinctively bent down, stretched out his arms and caught Dumpling firmly. Then he lifted her up. She was soft and small in his arms, and there was still a faint milky fragrance on her body. Her smile was bright and her grape-like big eyes were sparkling. A doting smile finally appeared on Yizhao's face that had always been cold and solemn. Dumpling, did you miss Grandpa clan leader? Dumpling nodded vigorously. Yes, of course. Why didn't Grandpa clan leader say that he was coming? Before Yizhao could say anything, a smiling voice came from outside the door. Of course it's to give you a surprise. At the same time, a figure floated in. Tuanzi raised her head and looked over. Then she smiled even more happily. Grandpa Yu. Everyone present felt as if they were struck by lightning. You. One of the 5 great elders of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, Yu. Yizhao wasn't enough, and now Yu was here too? What was he doing? Yu walked over with a smile and directly reached out to pinch Dumpling's perky nose. Dumpling, did you miss Grandpa Yu? Yes, yes. Dumpling giggled. Elder Yu was satisfied. Yizhao glanced at him coldly. Elder Yu was fearless. Dumpling, you don't know, but Grandpa clan leader misses you so much that he abandoned me on the road just now. Yizhao's eyebrows twitched. It seemed that some people were really ungrateful. You're too useless. Their footsteps were so slow, and the wedding ceremony was about to end. Elder Yu coughed and touched his nose. It had been a long time since he was criticized like this. But who asked the other party to be the clan leader? Could he beat him? No, he couldn't. He could only endure it. So Grandpa clan leader misses me that much. Dumpling came to a realization. Then she grabbed Yizhao's beard and leaned over to kiss his face. Dumpling also misses Grandpa clan leader a lot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1810. Yizhao's body stiffened. He was so agitated that his hands were trembling. What had he not seen in his life? Even in the face of death, his heart wouldn't beat so quickly. But this feeling was wonderful. He felt as though his entire body was soaked in a hot spring. It was warm, comfortable, and smooth. In short, there was only one word to describe it: comfortable. At this moment, he even felt that even if Dumpling wanted the stars in the sky, he would find a way to pluck them and give them to her. As long as she was happy. Elder Yu was petrified as he watched from the side. He seemed to have assisted her? He was jealous. But at this moment, the crowd in the hall wasn't just jealous. They were about to go crazy. Everything that had happened in such a short period of time contained too much information. What did that little girl called Dumpling call Yizhao? Grandpa clan chief? Didn't that mean that she was the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix that had contracted with xuanhuan? No, what happened to the agreement that she was here to cause trouble? What happened to the agreement that the bloodline of the ancient divine beasts wasn't to be sullied? What happened to the agreement that the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix wouldn't interact with humans and draw a clear line between them? What was going on now? That little girl was clearly contracted with xuanhuan. Otherwise, she wouldn't have suddenly appeared beside xuanhuan. Didn't Yizhao care about that? And he was so affectionate toward her. Furthermore, didn't Crimson Gold Sky Phoenixes have to wait until they reached adulthood to take on a human form? That little girl clearly looked very young. Someone braced himself and asked. May I ask? Clan Chief Yizhao, This time Yizhao finally turned his head and shot him a glance. I forgot to introduce her. This is Dumpling, the young master of our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Dead silence. That short sentence was no different from a bolt of lightning that struck the ethereal hall. Everyone was stunned. Their expressions were fascinating. Young master. That little girl was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. No, that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was xuanhuan's contracted mythological beast. What did this mean? No one knew what this meant. Because such a thing had never happened before. Just a moment ago, they were still thinking that xuanhuan might be targeted by Yizhao because of the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix. In the next second, Yizhao dropped such a bombshell. How could anyone accept this? No, how could there be such a person? It's one thing for you to form a contract with a divine beast, but it's an ancient divine beast. Putting aside the fact that he was an ancient divine beast, he was actually a young master? Normal people wouldn't even dare to dream like that. Chu Luiyue said with a smile. Patriarch Yizhao, Elder Yu, please take a seat. Then she looked at the people in the hall, and her smile became even more amiable and brilliant. Why are you all in a daze? Take a seat. Today is the wedding day of Her Highness and I. We are very grateful that all of you took the trouble to come here. Everyone, please feel free to treat this place as your own home. Who's your own home? We don't have such a relationship with the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. For a moment, countless people were complaining in their hearts. However, Yizhao and Yu were here, so they didn't dare to say a single word. It wasn't until Yizhao sat down with Dumpling that everyone sat down again one after another. His seat wasn't stable at all. There was only one thought left in most people's minds now. Offending xuanhuan was equivalent to offending Dumpling. Offending Dumpling was equivalent to offending the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. If they were blind and killed xuanhuan, it would be equivalent to killing the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. According to Yizhao's character, it wouldn't be enough to wipe out the entire clan 10 times. What the heck? Xuanhuan has such a background? Why didn't I hear anything about it before? That's right. Everyone thought that she offended the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Who knew that she had contracted their young master? This is really something. Who can afford to offend such a powerful backer? But why would Yi Zhao agree to this? This doesn't make sense. You want to know? Go and ask him yourself. Anyway, I don't want to know. What's the use of knowing? Let's think about whether we offended that person just now. Who the hell told me that Xuanhuan is of a lowly background and has no one to rely on? I'll kill him when I get back. If that's called not having a backer, then let's not live anymore. Yi Zhao's appearance and declaration of his position caused everyone's attitude to take a 180-degree turn. It couldn't be helped. A strong fist was the highest truth. At this moment, no one cared about why Yi Zhao was so open-minded about contracting Dumpling with Xuanhuan. He had already said that he was their young master and even came to support them. Wasn't that enough? Dumpling nestled in Yi Zhao's arms, beaming with joy. Seeing that she was fine, Yi Zhao and Yi were also relieved. In fact, a large part of the reason why they decided to come this time was because Dumpling said that they had gone to Divine Dragon Island. Even though Dumpling said that she was fine, they were still worried. After thinking about it, they still came. In addition, this way Xuanhuan and Dumpling would have less trouble traveling in the Divine Ruins world in the future. Killing several birds with one stone, why not? Yi Zhao said, "Oh right. By the way, our Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix clan has also brought a small gift for your wedding." As he spoke, he nodded at Elder EU beside him. Elder EU stepped forward with a smile and handed over a jade bottle. This is the spring water condensed in the frost cave on Godly Phoenix Mountain. It's only produced once every 100 years, and it's extremely beneficial for cultivation. This is a small gift to show our respect. A trace of shock flashed across Chu Liyue's eyes. She knew about this item. Back then, that god-level expert had gone to Godly Phoenix Mountain to ask for this item. And at that time he had only asked for a few drops. In the end, he hadn't even been able to enter Godly Phoenix Mountain, let alone obtain the spring water from the frost cave. She didn't expect that not only did Yi Zhao and the others come personally, but they also brought such a generous gift. Chu Liyue received it with both hands and thanked them solemnly. Everyone in the main hall revealed looks of envy. Some people were so lucky that they couldn't understand it. After today's event, even if they wanted to do anything in the future, they would have to think twice. Suddenly, another low and heroic laughter sounded out from afar. Ah, it's so lively here. Is this old man late? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1811. Someone else is coming? When everyone heard this voice, they all looked outside the door. Why does this wedding ceremony seem to be getting more and more lively? It's already so late. Who could it be? I don't know. In the world of Divine Ruins, basically everyone who has dealings with the Yuntian Tower is here, right? Many people were filled with guesses. Soon, that figure came from the horizon and appeared in front of the main hall. His speed was so fast that the person in charge of passing on the message outside didn't even have time to make a sound. The main hall fell silent. Everyone's gaze fell on the person who came. It was a man who looked to be in his 40s. He was tall and sturdy and his face was angular. At this moment, he was walking inside with a warm smile on his face. Who is this? I don't know, but looking at his imposing manner, he doesn't seem to be an ordinary person. When did such a person appear in the world of Divine Ruins? Yi Zhao sat up straight and stared at the person who came. Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue stood up at the same time. Rong Xiu smiled. Senior Mao Zhen, you're finally here. When the name Mao Zhen was shouted out, everyone was stunned. After a moment, someone seemed to have thought of something and suddenly gasped. Mao Zhen? Could it be? Mao Zhen laughed. You also know that there have been too many things happening on the Divine Dragon Island recently, so I'm a little late. But don't worry, this old man didn't forget to bring this wedding gift. His voice was full of energy and it echoed clearly in the entire main hall, falling into everyone's ears. When they heard Divine Dragon Island, almost everyone's expression changed. Wasn't that the Great Phoenix Dragon's territory? Then they remembered that Rong Xiu had called him Senior Mao Zhen. Isn't that the Great Phoenix Dragon's genius from 1,000 years ago? Mao Zhen. Mao Zhen. How could it be him? Rumor has it that he's not crazy. That person didn't dare to say the rest of the words. Because Mao Zhen had already heard the words and looked over. He still had a smile on his face, but when his gaze swept over, it carried a powerful pressure that made one's heart tremble. It seems that everyone is not very well informed. Mao Zhen looked around and raised his eyebrows. Since everyone is here today, there are some things that I would like to tell you about. I'm Mao Zhen, and I'm also the new Great Phoenix Dragon's Patriarch. In the future, when you meet again, please don't mistake me for someone else. Patriarch? Someone couldn't help but ask. Isn't the Patriarch of the Great Phoenix Dragon's Patriarch? Mao Zhen casually waved his hand and said with a faint smile. Mao Zhen? He killed and framed his own kind. He is a sinner of the Great Void Phoenix Dragon race. Now he had been stripped of his dragon scales and imprisoned. What? Do you want to meet him? The person who asked the question instantly turned pale. No. I was just casually asking. The other people's reactions were not much better than this person's. It was like a sudden clap of thunder. Mao Zhen, who was rumored to have died a long time ago, suddenly appeared and immediately became the clan leader. On the other hand, Mao Yang, who had been the clan leader for hundreds of years, became a sinner overnight and was even sentenced to death? In fact, they couldn't be blamed for not being informed. It was really too difficult to find out about the Great Phoenix Dragon's Patriarch. The Divine Dragon Island's geographical location was special. Ordinary people didn't know where it was. In addition, the Great Phoenix Dragon's Patriarch had always been arrogant. Without some means, the human race wouldn't know anything. Most importantly, Mao Zhen was indeed busy cleaning up the Patriarch's patriarch and deliberately blocked the news. Outsiders had no way of knowing. However, since he had shown up today, he naturally had to make things clear. As he spoke, he retracted his gaze and waved his sleeve. A purple gold flowing light flew out. Rongxiu raised his hand. The purple gold flowing light landed in his palm and turned into a palm-sized dragon scale. However, these dragon scales were different from ordinary dragon scales. There was a totem drawn on the surface of the scales with bright lines. Rongxiu's eyes flickered. Chu Liwei also sensed the astonishing aura on the dragon scale and couldn't help but widen her eyes slightly. Senior Mao Zhen, this is... Haha, this old man didn't think of what to give you previously. After all, there are many treasures in the Yuntian Tower. After thinking about it, this old man decided to give this red heart dragon scale to you. In the future, with this item, you will be my Divine Dragon Island's distinguished guests. You can come and go as you wish. If there is any danger, use this dragon scale as a signal. My Great Phoenix Dragon's Patriarch will spare no effort to help. At this point, he paused and looked at Chu Liwei with admiration. This girl is really very beautiful. Rongxiu, you are very lucky. Rongxiu's smile deepened. The corners of his eyes and brows seemed to relax a little. Yes, it was indeed his greatest fortune to be able to marry her. Mao Zhen's deep and powerful voice knocked heavily on everyone's heart. Some people were already in a daze. This is... Even the Great Phoenix Dragon's Patriarch came to support xuanhuan? When did they know each other? They seemed to be very close? If not for their strong friendship, why would Mao Zhen have such an attitude? Not only did he come to congratulate them personally, but he also gave them the Red Heart Dragon scale. Thank you, Senior Mao Zhen. Please take a seat. Chu Liwei said with a smile. Mao Zhen's seat was arranged long ago. When he sat down, he happened to sit right across from Yizhao. The two patriarchs of the primordial divine beasts looked at each other. In an instant, there seemed to be sparks flying everywhere. At this moment, everyone in the hall clearly felt that the air seemed to have frozen. Who didn't know that the relationship between the Great Phoenix Dragon and the Red Gold Heavenly Phoenix had always been rather subtle? The two sides never casually stepped into each other's territory. There was a clear boundary between them. However, they had always been competing with each other in the open and in the dark. Now that Yizhao and Mao Zhen met each other, there was a sense of tension. These two wouldn't fight on the spot, right? Just as everyone's hearts were filled with worry, Mao Zhen was the first to laugh. Brother Yizhao, how have you been? His laugh broke the deadlock. Yizhao's face was expressionless as usual. I haven't congratulated Brother Mao Zhen on clearing your grievances and returning to the peak. Mao Zhen glanced at Tuanzi and sighed with emotion. With Dumpling, Brother Yizhao is really enviable. These words made Yizhao very happy. It was useless to praise him, but as long as he praised Dumpling, his attitude would be much gentler. Not at all. I have to thank Brother Mao Zhen for taking care of her previously. Mao Zhen laughed. How was it me taking care of her? Dumpling has always been with her Ayu. She has always been taking care of Dumpling. Hearing this, Yizhao's eyes were a little moved. He looked at Chu Liwei and nodded gently. Thank you. Chu Liwei hurriedly refused and smiled. You're too polite. I promised you to take good care of Dumpling. This is what I should do. The atmosphere on their side gradually became harmonious. leaving only the people in the hall with confused expressions. Why are they still reminiscing about the past? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1812. This scene was too stimulating. Before they could even enter the Divine Phoenix Mountain, Xianxia had already contracted the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Before they even knew that the clan leader of the Divine Dragon Island had changed, Xianxia was already chatting happily with the new clan leader. What was even stranger was that these two clans could actually sit in the same room and chat so peacefully. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that they were giving face to Rongxiu and Xianxia. First Yizhao came, which was already unbearable. Now Maojin came too. This was simply too much. No backing. No background. Then what the F***ck is going on? Some people were already going crazy. I was just mocking Xianxia. She must have heard everything. Regret. Really regret. Many people in the hall had ugly expressions on their faces. They were restless in their seats and wanted nothing more than to run away. This place, staying for even a second longer, was torture. Chu Luiyue calmly raised her wine cup, which was filled with the tea that Rongxiu had just changed. Her thick and long eyelashes drooped slightly, hiding the surging waves in her eyes. Actually, how could there be so many rumors spreading? How could there be so many emotions being stirred up? It was simply because they themselves thought that way. These people from the aristocratic clans had been in their positions for a long time. All they could see was the small piece of land in front of them. And their views were often prejudiced. Just because she was born outside the Divine Ruins world, they looked down on her. No matter how outstanding she was, it still couldn't offset the obsession in the depths of their hearts. At this time, persuasion was useless. The most effective way was to give them a few slaps to wake them up. That's right. She indeed didn't have her own power in the Divine Ruins world. But this didn't mean that she was easy to bully. Whether it was the Yuntian Tower, Lingxiao College, or the two ancient Divine Beast clans, they would all become her backing. From today onwards, she would let these people understand that she was not someone who would be bullied and humiliated. The banquet continued. However, for many of the people present, they had already lost their appetite. He had come here today to watch a joke, but who knew that his face would be slapped swollen in the end? However, he had to endure this slap. Whether it was the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix or the Great Phoenix Dragon, they were not people they could afford to offend. Thus, those who were happy became happier, and those who were depressed became even more depressed. Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue didn't care about this. In any case, he had already achieved his goal. Nothing else mattered. If you truly came to congratulate them, they would welcome you with open arms. If you came here with other intentions, then you can't blame me. Suddenly, a figure rushed into the main hall. Your Highness, Princess Consort, there are two guests. Rongxiu narrowed his eyes slightly. Those who were supposed to come today were already here. Who else would appear? Furthermore, from the looks of it, the other party's identity was somewhat unusual. Who are you? Rongxiu asked faintly. That person hurriedly said. They said, they are from the Nan family. As these words fell, many people subconsciously stopped what they were doing, looking surprised and doubtful. The Nan family? That Nan family? Rongxiu's expression became a little colder. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly, put down the wine glass, and raised the corner of his lips into an ambiguous smile. It seemed that they hadn't stopped yet. Hadn't they suffered enough from before? Rongxiu leaned back, his eyes cold. Drive them out. Digression, 11:30 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1813. That person hesitated for a moment before speaking. Your Highness, the two of them said that they're here to deliver a congratulatory gift after hearing that you're celebrating a joyous occasion today. Rongxiu glanced at him indifferently. The silent pressure caused that person's heart to tremble, and he swallowed the rest of his words. Yes. After saying those words, that person quickly left. Many people in the ethereal hall glanced at one another. The Nan clan. Why are they here? If I recall correctly, the Yuntian Tower doesn't have much interaction with them, right? Why are they here all of a sudden? However, it seems like the Yuntian Tower doesn't welcome them. The Nan clan has always been arrogant, so what's the meaning of this? And the Yuntian Tower doesn't seem to care about them at all. Humph! The Yuntian Tower has the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix and the Great Illusionary Dragon as their backing now. Who else can possibly catch their eye? You're right. In the world of God there were many sects and clans, and the various powers were entangled with one another. It was common for the weak to rely on the strong. Without a doubt, the two primordial divine beast clans were the two thickest thighs in the world. And now they were being embraced by the xuanhuan alone. What else was there to say? This small interlude was quickly forgotten by everyone. Outside the barrier of the Yuntian Tower, Luo Yan's face was cold. Nanyi stood behind him and shook his arm with an aggrieved expression. She really wanted to go in. Luo Yan turned around and patted her hand comfortingly. Then he looked at the guard in charge of guarding the barrier. We're really here to congratulate you. The black-armored guard looked at Luo Yan coldly. His Highness' intentions are clear. The Yuntian Tower doesn't welcome you. Please leave quickly. If you continue to pester us, don't blame us for being impolite. Luo Yan's chest was burning with rage. He had never suffered such humiliation in all these years. Yet, he had been thwarted time and time again by the Rongxiu and the Xuanhuan. However, this was the other party's territory, and it wouldn't do them any good if a fight broke out. Luo Yan took a deep breath and pulled Nanyi away. Let's go. Nanyi wanted to struggle again, but when she looked up and saw Luo Yan's angry face, she knew that he was really angry. She didn't dare to do anything else and could only follow him obediently. The two figures quickly disappeared. About an hour later, Luo Yan brought Nanyi to a mountain peak. The forest on the mountain was lush. The sun was shining brightly, casting mottled shadows in the forest. There seemed to be the sound of a stream flowing in his ears. Everything was calm and peaceful. However, Nanyi's mood wasn't soothed by this scenery. Along the way, she followed behind Luo Yan with her head lowered silently. Luo Yan only stopped when he reached a relatively flat area. Yi. As soon as he turned around, Nanyi looked up and only then did he see the tears on her face. Luo Yan's heart instantly felt as if it had been pricked by something, and his voice softened a lot. I've already said that this method won't work. We've already made such a fuss with them before, so why would they still be in contact with us? Besides, today is their wedding day. If it were him, he would definitely make the same choice. Nanyi had always been very smart. He didn't know why she was so persistent this time. She knew that there was a wall in front of her, but she still wanted to hit it hard. Nanyi pursed her lips as tears kept falling. Ever since she couldn't speak, she didn't want to make any sound, including crying. It would only make her feel tormented and painful. Luo Yan patted her shoulder gently and sighed. I know you hate him. But you haven't recovered from your injuries yet. Even if you want to take revenge, you don't have the ability to do so, right? And, for some reason, the family head is obviously very afraid of Rongxiu. If we act rashly, I'm afraid that the Nan family will also. Nanyi turned her head away. She didn't want to care about this. She only knew that her tongue had been cut off and she couldn't speak anymore. No one else could understand her pain, so how could they be in a position to comfort her? Seeing her like this, Luo Yan knew that it was useless to persuade her, so he didn't say anything. He had already brought her here according to her request, but he couldn't do anything more. She still needed to slowly digest this kind of thing herself. Nanyi suddenly walked towards the middle of the mountain. Luo Yan frowned and immediately followed. Where are you going? Nanyi didn't stop and just walked forward. Luo Yan wanted to stop her, but seeing that she still seemed to be angry, he knew that the only thing he could do now was to go along with her, so he could only follow her. The two of them walked forward in silence. About a quarter of an hour later, a black shadow suddenly flew past. A dangerous and cold aura was approaching rapidly. Luo Yan knew that something was wrong and immediately pulled Nanyi back. Step back. But it was already too late. The black shadow approached quickly and turned into a black fog that swallowed Nanyi. Luo Yan was shocked and immediately mobilized the force in his body to take action. However, at this moment he was shocked to discover that his body seemed to be fixed by something and he couldn't move. Then the black fog quickly spread over and strangled Luo Yan's neck. It was like a venomous snake slowly crawling around his neck, cold and sinister. Luo Yan desperately mobilized the force in his body, but he was still helpless. One had to know that he was a venerable god expert, and ordinary cultivators were no match for him. Even if a venerable god of the same level fought against him, it was impossible for him to be crushed like this. Just as countless thoughts flashed through Luo Yan's mind, the black fog had already started to spread around him and swallow him bit by bit. Perhaps because he was much stronger than Nanyi, the speed at which the black fog swallowed him was obviously much slower. But this couldn't go on. If he couldn't think of a way to escape, he was afraid that, boom, a powerful force suddenly erupted from Luo Yan's body. The violent force spread out in all directions, causing the black fog to disperse. Luo Yan was finally able to catch his breath. He immediately turned around and fled without hesitation. He used the fastest speed in his life. However, the black fog wasn't slow either. Before he could run far, Luo Yan felt a strong force pulling his ankle. He looked down and his heart skipped a beat. The black fog had already wrapped around him again. This time, the power contained in the black fog seemed to have become stronger, causing Luo Yan's speed to become slower and slower. A strong sense of fear struck him. Luo Yan suddenly turned around. The black fog was like a monster that opened its bloody mouth and swallowed him. A strange blood-colored totem suddenly flashed in front of his eyes. Then Luo Yan's vision turned black and he lost consciousness. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1814. The figures of Nan Yi and Luo Yan both disappeared into the forest. As for the dense and strange black mist, it gradually dissipated and vanished without a trace after swallowing the two of them. The forest was quiet. A breeze blew, blowing the mottled shadows of the trees. The stream gurgled and the ornaments jingled. Everything had returned to how it was in the beginning. As if nothing had happened. A black swamp spread out endlessly. There were grayish-white reeds swaying in the wind. At a glance, the world was boundless. Nan Yifan stood at the edge of the swamp. If he walked any further, he would step into this dark and terrifying swamp. A cold and gloomy aura came from all directions, including him. There was also a faint smell of blood mixed with the smell of something rotten, which was nauseating. Nan Yifan frowned, suppressing the churning between his chest and abdomen. If it weren't for Yuxing, he wouldn't have come to this place. But now there was no other way. The head of the Nan family, Nan Yifan, requests an audience with the sect master. He cupped his fists, his attitude respectful and polite. A cool breeze blew and the reeds fluttered. But there was no response. Nan Yifan continued. The head of the Nan family, Nan Yifan, requests an audience with the sect master. There was silence all around. Nan Yifan hesitated for a moment, then lifted his clothes and knelt on the ground. The head of the Nan family, Nan Yifan, requests an audience with the sect master. In this empty world that seemed to have been abandoned by the world, Nan Yifan's voice sounded particularly lonely and helpless. But he seemed to have expected this situation. He just gritted his teeth and begged again and again. From day to night. From night to day. He knelt at the edge of the swamp and begged for a day and a night. When his voice became hoarse and he was almost unable to speak, the reeds in front of him finally began to sway violently. Pieces of white floss flew up and fell into the black swamp, and were quickly swallowed by the surging mud. Vaguely white bones could be seen. Nan Yifan pretended not to see it. He just raised his head and stared straight ahead with bloodshot eyes. The surroundings seemed to have become quieter. Nan Yifan's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something, and the blood in his body seemed to have stopped flowing at this moment. His throat was burning with pain, his body was stiff, and his mind was blank. But at this moment he couldn't care less about that. Finally, a low and hoarse voice sounded. Nan Yifan? What are you doing here? Nan Yifan's pupils shrank. Even though the other party did not reveal himself, just hearing this voice was enough to make him excited. He said at once, "Sect leader, please save my son's life." That voice seemed to laugh. Nanyu Xing's Yuan meridian has been severed and he is now a cripple. Even if he forcefully recovers his Yuan meridian, he will only be able to recover 30% of his original talent. You don't have to spend so much effort. Nan Yifan instantly felt like he had fallen into an ice cave. How can it only recover 30%? Lord Sect Leader's divine abilities. If it was an ordinary person, it wouldn't be a problem. But the key point is, the one who did it this time was Rongxiu. He wanted your son to suffer a fate worse than death, so he used some special means. Even if it was me, it would take a lot of effort to completely deal with him. Nan Yifan's eyes lit up as if he had grasped onto the last straw. Lord Sect Leader still has a way. But before he could continue, the other party continued. But why don't you think about it? Nanyu Xing is worthy of me using my full strength. Nan Yifan's heart turned cold. Using my full strength, not to mention Nanyu Xing, even he was not worthy. But, if that was the case, wouldn't Nanyu Xing be finished? Nanyu Xing was bent on seeking death. Even if he recovered 30% of his talent, he would not be able to accept it. How could a prideful person like him accept becoming a cripple? He could not even accept becoming an ordinary person. These two situations were equally painful for people like him. So, it still doesn't work. Nan Yifan's expression was dejected and defeated. He had already abandoned all his dignity and pride to come here and ask for help. But, It still didn't work. When he thought of the scene of Nan Yuxing begging him to help, his heart couldn't help but tremble. In this world there was probably no parent who could accept this. Rong Xiu, even I won't easily make a move against him. Your good son and daughter are very bold. How dare they provoke him again and again? They are really courting death. There was a hint of mockery in the voice. They can only blame themselves for this. Nan Yifan's face was pale and his cracked lips trembled violently. Of course he knew all this. But how could he have thought that Nan Yuxing and Yi would encounter Rong Xiu in the god-slaying tomb? Furthermore, for various reasons, he had even gotten into a fight with them. Even though he had tried his best to make up for it after he found out about this, it was obviously useless. Is there really no other way? Nan Yifan murmured in despair. Actually, it's not that there is no other way. It just depends on whether you are willing to do it or not. The voice said slowly. Nan Yifan suddenly raised his head. Please give me some pointers, sect leader. The other party seemed to smile again, but he did not directly answer the question. Instead, he changed the topic and asked him a question. If I remember correctly, your daughter's talent seems to be pretty good? Nan Yifan nodded in a daze. Yes. Yi's talent is also very outstanding. Originally, I had high hopes for her, but unfortunately her tongue. Suddenly, he seemed to have realized something and his eyes widened. Wait. Sect leader, could it be? This time, the other party's laughter sounded very happy. You are very smart. They are related by blood, which is much more convenient. If your daughter's talent is transferred to your son will naturally recover. However, your daughter will become a complete cripple in the future. It's all up to you to decide. You can think about it carefully. These few words were as light as a feather, but they pressed on Nan Yifan's chest like a heavy stone. One was Yuxing and the other was Yi. Both were his flesh and blood. How could he choose? Nan Yifan knelt there with his hands on the ground. Because of the force, his fingers were pale. I don't have much patience. The voice urged lazily. Finally, Nan Yifan closed his eyes. Change? I have let you down. But your big brother really can't be crippled like this. Nan Yifan's heart was in pain and he was almost numb. The voice suddenly laughed. Forget it, you don't have to do this here. You have invested more energy and hope in Nan Yuxing. If he can't make it, your position as the head of the family will fall into someone else's hands sooner or later. So, you have to save Nan Yuxing. The choice is so simple. What's so difficult for you? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1815. These words were like an extremely sharp knife that ruthlessly pierced through Nan Yifan's last cover. He peeled off his skin and flesh, revealing his bloody insides. His body swayed, but his face turned even paler. However, even he had to admit that the other party was right. All these years on the surface he seemed to dote on Nan Yi more, but in reality he had always placed his hopes of inheriting the heavy responsibility on Nan Yuxing. If Nan Yuxing died, all his hard work over the past few decades would be in vain. So now he finally made this extremely difficult decision. Nan Yifan fell to the ground. All his strength seemed to have been sucked out by someone, and his entire body was shrouded in a layer of despair. You made a wise decision. The other party praised him. Nan Yifan gasped for breath and said weakly, That's right. I want to go back first and talk to Yi. Why go through so much trouble? The other party interrupted him. I know you're a smart person, so I've already brought Nan Yi over. Nan Yifan suddenly looked up. A gust of wind blew past and the reeds swayed. In the depths of the black swamp, a black fog wrapped around a person and flew over. Nan Yifan recognized at a glance that the person inside was his daughter, Nan Yi. Sect Master. After the shock, Nan Yifan couldn't help but feel a strong anger in his heart. Had he already set his sights on Yi? Don't be in a hurry to be angry. Your precious daughter has a lot of thoughts. When I found her, she wasn't in the Nan family, but on a mountain peak not far from the Yuntian Tower. At this time, she still thinks that she can rely on her own ability to take revenge. Nan Yifan pursed his lips tightly and didn't say anything. This was indeed something that Nan Yi would do. In the past, when she was a little arrogant and willful, he would at most criticize her a little and had never really taken it seriously. It was probably because of this that he raised her to be so naive and even to the point of stupidity. He looked at Nan Yi, who was trapped in the black fog. At this moment, her eyes were tightly shut, and she seemed to be still unconscious. As if she had sensed something, Nan Yi frowned. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly. He was about to wake up. Do you still want to talk to her? The voice asked. Nan Yifan clenched his fists so tightly that his bones creaked. Finally he let go of his hand. No need. These two words seemed to have used up all of his strength. In the next second, the black fog quickly entered Nan Yi's body. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. Nan Yifan's vision turned black and he fainted. Yintian Tower. That small setback did not attract the attention of the crowd. The appearance of Yi Zhao and Mao Zhen caused a huge change in the atmosphere in the ethereal hall. Most people became a little more reserved. In fact, there were many people here who wanted to take the opportunity to get close to him and establish a relationship with him. After all, they usually didn't even have the chance to meet these two. Now that he had finally encountered one, he naturally did not want to waste this opportunity. However, this matter was easier said than done. There were simply too many people in the ethereal hall. Those who were able to appear here were basically all reputable figures in the Divine Ruins world. They knew very well that at this time, whoever stepped forward first would be the most eye-catching. Besides, even if they were willing to go all out and say a few words in front of everyone, they would still be faced with a very serious problem. Yi Zhao and Mao Zhen were sitting opposite each other. Who should they approach first and who should they approach later? Although the atmosphere between the two sides was very harmonious, everyone was smart. They didn't really think that the Great Phoenix Dragon and the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix would be as close as a family from now on. If they were to curry favor with one first, they would inevitably offend the other. Both sides were evenly matched, and they could not afford to offend either of them. As such, everyone fell into a dilemma. In the end, no one moved. Many people looked at Chu Luiyue enviously. They wondered what kind of method she used to establish a good relationship with these two factions at the same time. In a slightly remote corner of the hall, Sun Yi and the others were sitting together. They were also invited to this banquet. Originally, Chu Luiyue had planned to arrange for them to sit at the front. After all, there were not many people on her side, and Sun Yi and the others had been with her for many years and had gone through life and death with her. In her heart, the 13yu tribe was no less important than her family. No, it should be said that she had long regarded them as her family. She wanted to give them the best. However, this suggestion was rejected by Sun Yi. Chu Luiyue also asked for the reason, and Sun Yi only replied indifferently, "I don't like noise." Chu Luiyue understood their personalities and knew that they did not like to be too eye-catching. If they stayed at the back, they would probably be more comfortable. After thinking for a moment, she agreed. "Sai, when will my dishes be ready?" Shifang stared at the various delicacies in front of him, but he had no appetite at all. He had a bitter look on his face. Wu Yao and Yu Jiu were eating very happily at the side and did not pay much attention to him. Little Hachi stopped eating after eating a little. Shifang was very touched. "Sister 8, you also think that my cooking is the best, right?" Little Hachi rested her chin on her hand and said lazily, "No. I'm on a diet." Shifang was speechless. Sun Yi's expression was as indifferent and distant as usual. He had never cared much about such trivial matters. 13 took a bite of the snack and couldn't help but lean closer. "Big brother, when do you plan to tell Master about that matter?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1816. Sun Yi glanced at him. "Eat your food properly." 13 shrunk his neck and said obediently, "Oh. Looks like Big Brother doesn't intend to say it for the time being. However, Big Brother has always been a strategist, so he definitely has his own plans. It's not my place to worry." 13's gaze landed on the wine glass beside him. Inside there was clear wine that glowed with light. He licked his lips, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Big Brother, can I drink?" Sun Yi didn't turn around. No. 13 had expected this outcome, but he still hesitated and struggled. "Then, just one mouthful?" Sun Yi glanced at him. "If you beat me, I'll let you drink." 13 was instantly discouraged. Big Brother said that every time. In the past, he didn't have any experience. Every time he felt that he had improved, he would think that he could win and excitedly run to compete with Big Brother. Then he would return in defeat. Without exception. If he wanted to beat Big Brother, God knows how long it would take. Seeing his dejected expression, Shifang couldn't bear to see him like this. Big Brother, 13 is still a child. It's fine to let him drink just one mouthful. There are so many of us here. Little Hachi's beautiful eyes flickered as she gave Shifang a thumbs up. A true warrior. Not only did he dare to suggest to Big Brother, but he also dared to suggest letting 13 drink. Shifang's heart skipped a beat when she looked at him like this. Only then did he recall some tragic past and hurriedly try to salvage the situation. No. What I mean is, if Big Brother thinks it's inappropriate, then forget it. Forget it. 13 If you really want to drink, how about I make rice wine for you? 13 revealed a rare speechless expression. Little Hachi rolled her eyes again. Wu Yao finally stopped eating. Yu Jiu poked him. 13 is confused. Is Shifang also confused? Could it be that Shifang had become stupid from farming? How could he say that? Wu Yao swallowed the last mouthful of meat and sighed. This rice is really delicious. Unfortunately, he couldn't eat it today. Shifang. Sini suddenly spoke. Shifang shuddered all over. Hey Big Brother? You are not allowed to eat for a month. Shifang's face instantly collapsed. No Big Brother, I really didn't mean that. Just listen casually, don't take it to heart. The vegetables I grew over there will be ready to eat in a few days. After all, he had been starving for a long time. How was he going to survive if this continued for another month? However, Sini did not care whether he lived or died. 13 revealed a guilty expression. 10th Brother, I'm sorry. If it weren't for him, Brother 10 wouldn't have been punished like this. For a moment, 13 felt wronged and guilty. He just wanted to give it a try. Master doesn't like you drinking. Sini suddenly said calmly. 13 was stunned. He raised his head to look at him in surprise. Really? He had never heard his master mention it before. Sini frowned. The last time you accidentally drank wine, Master was worried for a few days. Sini's face immediately turned red. Although it had been a few years and he couldn't really remember what had happened at that time, it would be better if he didn't make his master worry. Big Brother, I was wrong. 13 lowered his head and obediently admitted his mistake. Sini nodded in satisfaction. This matter was finally over. The rest of them looked at each other. TSK. Little 13 was too pitiful. Master didn't even know that he drank, let alone whether he liked it or not. In terms of scheming, who could be Big Brother's match? Poor Eva. Sini looked up at Chu Luiyue, who was sitting at the head of the table. Digression. This is the last update on the 11th. It will be updated at noon on the 12th. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 1817. She was dressed in a red wedding gown with a phoenix coronet on her head. Her features were as beautiful as a painting, and her skin was as fair as jade. All the light in the surroundings seemed to fall on her body. She was magnificent, nothing more than that. Sini smiled and retracted his gaze. The wedding banquet lasted for a very long time. Yi Zhao and Mao Zhen stayed for a while longer before taking their leave. They rarely interacted with humans, and it was already a rare occasion that they were willing to pay a visit to Rongxiu and Shangguanyu. Yi Zhao didn't like such a lively scene, but seeing that Dumpling was fine, he was relieved. In the end, he bade Elder Yu farewell. Mao Zhen was in a better state. After being trapped in the coiling dragon pillar for 1,000 years, he had been very lonely. On top of that, he had been busy dealing with the problems that Mao Yang had left behind on Divine Dragon Island. It was rare for him to have some free time, so he decided to stay here for a while longer. It was only in the afternoon that he finally left. After the two of them left, the atmosphere in the ethereal hall finally returned to normal. Many people heaved a sigh of relief, but they couldn't help but feel a little regretful. It was rare for them to meet the two of them, but they didn't even get a chance to speak to them, let alone build a relationship with them. Obviously, they were here to support the two people who were getting married today. Faced with such a situation, what else could they do other than feel envious? Eventually, the crowd bade their farewells one after another, and it was only in the evening that all of the guests finally left. At night, there was a grand display of fireworks. Everyone gathered at the square in front of the ethereal hall. In the dark night sky, countless brilliant fireworks bloomed one after another. The entire Yuntian Tower was ablaze with lights, and it was immersed in a lively atmosphere. Chu Luiyue raised her head to look at this scene. Rongxiu turned to look at her. The fireworks illuminated her face, making it seem as clear as jade. It made her eyes seem as if they were filled with a myriad of stars. He held her hand tightly and their fingers intertwined. Yue, what are you thinking about? Chu Luiyue turned to look at him. I'm thinking about you. Her red lips curled into a smile as her eyes curved into crescents. Husband, I'm thinking about you. Rongxiu's heartbeat stopped for a moment. There were no words more touching than this one sentence from her. A moment later, his eyes flashed and he moved closer. What did you say? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows but refused to say anything. She just looked at him with a smile. Rongxiu gently rubbed her hand with his slightly rough fingers and coaxed her. Say it again. This husband didn't hear it clearly. Chu Liyue's smile deepened. He didn't hear her clearly and even said, "Husband?" Seeing that she was unwilling, Rong Xiu's eyes deepened. After that, a wisp of a smile that carried deep meaning appeared on his handsome and devilish face. He took her hand and turned to leave. Yan Qing, who was standing at the side, saw this and immediately stepped forward. "Your Highness?" Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "I'm drunk, so I'm going back to rest." Chu Liyue's face turned red. He didn't look drunk at all. Yes, Rong Xiu had drunk a lot before, but just now he was talking to her with clear eyes. In the blink of an eye, he said that he was drunk. Who would believe that? Yan Qing wanted to ask more, but Yumo pulled him from behind. He looked back and saw Yumo frantically winking at him. "What are you doing? Can't you tell?" Yan Qing immediately came back to his senses. A rare trace of embarrassment appeared on his iceberg-like face. He had really forgotten about it. A woman's laughter suddenly came from the side. It turns out that Lord Yan Qing also has times when his brain doesn't work. Yan Qing looked back and saw that it was a woman in a colorful dress who spoke. He remembered that this woman was one of the princess's subordinates. Hearing the other party's ridicule, he didn't take it seriously and quickly withdrew his gaze. He returned to his iceberg face. Little Hachi snorted coldly in her heart. She simply walked forward and waved her hand in front of his eyes. "I'm talking to you." When she approached, a fragrant wind blew. Her jade-like arms swayed in front of his eyes, and the colorful strings and bells on her slender wrists jingled. Yan Qing frowned and took half a step back. "Miss Little Hachi, the mountain wind is cold at night. Remember to wear more clothes." Little Hachi was angered to death by his words. Was he mocking her clothes? She had always dressed like this and looked beautiful. What's wrong with that? Ordinary men would have their eyes glued to her when they saw her like this. Not many of them would not be captivated by her. This Yan Qing was different. Not only did he ignore her problem, but he also ignored her as a person. "I'm fine. You don't have to care." When Little Hachi was angry, she was still very beautiful and enchanting. Even if she glared, she still looked somewhat seductive. So this gaze was not lethal to Yan Qing at all. He nodded. "In that case, Yan Qing will take his leave first. Little Hachi, have fun." With that, he really turned and left. Little Hachi was left alone in the wind, confused. "Sister 8, this is the first time a man has pulled a long face at you, right?" Shifang came over and glanced at Yan Qing from afar with eyes full of admiration. As expected of His Highness the Holy Sun's confidant. "You're clear-minded and have strong self-control." Sigh, Sister 8, bang. Lil 8 elbowed Shifang's face with the back of his hand. Shifang let out a muffled groan, almost dying here. "No one will treat you as a mute if you don't speak." Little Hachi said this and floated away like a colorful cloud. Shifang's eyes were sore and his nose hurt. He was hit until tears welled up in his eyes. "Sister 8, he was just saying that casually." Yujio patted his shoulder sympathetically. "Shifang, you should go back and farm. Eat more and talk less." "Alright, I forgot that you can't eat for a month." "TSK. How pitiful." Tani walked over slowly. His green robe fluttered in the wind. "Go back and cultivate when you're done playing." "Yes." Rong Xiu brought Chu Liyue back to the sacrificial god temple. The mountain wind blew on his face and it took a lot of effort to blow away some of the heat. However, Chu Liyue's heart was still beating rapidly. Fortunately, not long after the fireworks started, Taizu and the others went back. Otherwise, this scene, Rong Xiu, the sacrificial god temple was also decorated luxuriously because of the wedding. Glass palace lanterns hung from the ceiling, and a faint glow shone down, reflecting a brilliant light. "Greetings, Your Highness." "Princess." The black-armored soldiers on guard bowed one after another. Chu Liyue swallowed the rest of his words and obediently followed Rong Xiu to the main hall of the sacrificial god temple. This was Rong Xiu's residence. She had stayed here for a period of time before, so she was quite familiar with this place. However, she wasn't familiar with Rong Xiu like this. The room had already been redecorated. The bed was covered with a dragon and phoenix quilt, and the gauze curtain hung down. The red candles burned brightly and light and shadow intertwined. Everything seemed to be shrouded in a layer of indescribable ambiguity. Chu Liyue was stunned for a moment. Click. The door was locked. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1818. Chu Liyue's heart suddenly jumped along with the candlelight. The sound of footsteps approached from behind, as if stepping on her heart. until a pair of arms wrapped around her waist from behind. Rongxiu held her in his arms, gently rested his chin on her shoulder and sighed. They could smell each other's breaths. There was indeed an intoxicating smell of alcohol on his body. Mixed with the faint cold fragrance, it seemed to create an irresistible fatal attraction. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt relieved. She reached out and overlapped Rongxiu's hand. You are. Rongxiu's voice was deep and pleasant and a little hoarse. You are mine. Gentle, firm, and domineering. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be filled with something. She smiled gently and said, Yes. I am yours and you are mine. They had each other and they belonged to each other. I have waited for this day for a long time, Rongxiu said in a low voice. He spoke very slowly as if he was really drunk, but also as if he was thinking about something, filled with longing for something from a long time ago. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly softened. You, say it again. Rongxiu was almost whispering in her ear. Therefore, every syllable, every breath, fell clearly into her ears and her heart. His hot breath fell on her ears and neck and it was slightly itchy. She couldn't help but laugh and shrink her neck. Husband? Husband? Anyway, from now on, there will be plenty of opportunities to say it. Rongxiu suddenly bit her delicate earlobe. The tip of his tongue rolled gently and it was boiling hot. Her voice suddenly stopped and turned into a soft murmur. Rongxiu hugged her tighter and his voice was hoarse. The vague syllables scattered sporadically. But today I really want to hear it. It was a sleepless night. Lingxiao College. It was already late at night, and a bright moon hung high in the sky. It flowed quietly like water. In the room, a person stood alone by the window. The moonlight elongated his shadow. I stood alone. His face was hidden behind the shadow of the carved window and could not be seen clearly. In the depths of his eyes, there was a thick coldness that could not be dissolved. Suddenly, the space behind him began to ripple. Then a figure appeared in the room. It was Yiwenzhua. Damn it. Yiwenzhua could not help but curse as soon as he came out of the void. The indifference on Jun Jiuqing's face quickly faded. He raised his eyebrows slightly and turned to salute. Master, you're back. That devilish and flirtatious face had already returned to its usual expression. Yiwenzhua did not notice this. He slammed the table angrily. This pair of master and disciple are really cunning. Earlier, when he noticed that Nansu Huai had left, he secretly followed him. But not long after, Nansu Huai seemed to have noticed his presence and used some tricks to shake him off. After that, he searched for a long time but could not find Nansu Huai. In the end, he heard that Rongxiu and Xuanhuan were getting married. As the master, Nansu Huai personally went to congratulate them. What was more hateful was that the clan leaders of the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix and Great Phoenix Dragon were also there. From now on, the entire Divine Ruins world would know that they had these two great backers. It would be even more difficult to deal with them. That Xuanhuan, I don't know what tricks she used. Not only did she make Yi Zhao agree to continue the contract with the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix, but she also made Yi Zhao choose her as the young master. Yiwenzhua knew very well that the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix had broken through from the Crimson Tail Phoenix, so the position of young master must have been added later. What were Yi Zhao and the elders of the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix clan thinking? Why would they choose a Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix who had already contracted with a human to be the young master of their clan? Jun Jiuqing said indifferently. Her luck has always been good. Yiwenzhua still could not accept this. With this relationship between Xuanhuan and Yi Zhao, it would be even more difficult for them to do anything in the future. Do you know that Nansu Huai personally gave out 2 green jade tokens at their wedding? He even said that she's his only disciple. Yiwenzhua gritted his teeth. He's obviously passing the position of dean to her. Jun Jiuqing was silent for a moment. In fact, they should have realized this earlier. Back then, Nansu Huai did not hide his admiration and adoration for Chu Luiyue. Now that she had returned, her talent and strength were even greater than before. Naturally, Nansu Huai valued her even more. Not to mention she now had several backers. Not to mention Yiwenzhua, even the major families and clans of the Yuntian Tower would not dare to do anything to her in the future. The room fell into silence. Yiwenzhua took a few deep breaths and tried to calm himself down. Then he suddenly thought of something and looked up at Jun Jiuqing. There was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. You know that they're getting married today, right? Jun Jiuqing nodded and seemed to chuckle. The Yuntian Tower sent out invitations. Other than those who had completely fallen out with them, the rest of the Yuntian Tower's influential figures were all invited. Who doesn't know about this now? Iwenzhua looked at him suspiciously. You don't have any thoughts? Although he had always told Jun Jiuqing not to fall in love with that girl, he was still his disciple after all. He could guess what was on his mind. Jun Jiuqing raised an eyebrow. This disciple does not dare to forget master's teachings. Besides, since they're already married, there's nothing to say. Iwenzhua stared at him for a long time before nodding in relief. It's good that you can think like that. There are many women in the world. Jiuqing, as long as you can get to the top, what kind of woman can't you want? Jun Jiuqing smiled and lowered his eyes, hiding the emotions in his eyes. Iwenzhua asked again. I see that your aura seems to have strengthened a lot. Did you break through again? Jun Jiuqing nodded. Iwenzhua knocked on the table. That's good. Anyway, there's no need to continue staying in the academy. We'll go back tomorrow. What belongs to you, you still have to take it back. A dark light flashed in Jun Jiuqing's eyes as he responded. Yes. Sacrificial God Temple. It was still morning. White mountain mist surged back and forth, making the entire sacrificial god temple seem like an illusion. Among them, a strong and agile huge white figure jumped a few times and headed toward the sacrificial god temple. Wuxialover. It went to the window as usual, but found that the window was locked and there was a layer of enchantment. It couldn't enter at all. Xuexue's face instantly collapsed, and it could only lie down under the window. It clenched its claws in boredom while waiting for the person inside to come out. In the room, under the red brocade quilt, 3,000 strands of black hair were spread out messily. Chu Luiyue opened her eyes in a daze. Who? Her voice was very hoarse, and because she was still sleepy, it was especially soft. Rong Xiu kissed her forehead and coaxed in a low voice, No one. You didn't sleep well last night, so you should make up for it first. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 18-19. Chu Luiyue wanted to beat up the culprit, but her body was sore and weak. She mumbled a few words and quickly fell asleep again. After coaxing her to sleep, Rong Xiu got up. He was casually wearing a snow-white inner shirt. It was loose and revealed a large portion of his marble-like chest. He clearly hadn't slept the whole night, but he was very energetic. There was even a hint of exuberance in his noble eyes. Clearly the saint was in a good mood. He took a step and quickly walked to the window. Sensing his arrival, Xuexue immediately got up happily. Was he going to open the door? Was he going to let it in? Rong Xiu's cold voice sounded. Looks like you're very free. Then make a trip to the Red Moon Desert. Xuexue immediately felt as if it was struck by lightning. Red Moon Desert. Go again? No. It pounced on the wall and let out a low roar, hoping to awaken its master's last bit of conscience. Finally, Rong Xiu's voice sounded again. Double. Roar. Xuexue widened its eyes in horror, then turned and ran. No double, no double. I'll go right now, okay? Xuexue, who was in a panic, drew a white line in the air and then quickly disappeared. In the distance, Umo poked Yanqing. TSK. Did you see that? If you had followed them yesterday, you would have ended up like them. Yanqing's expression didn't change. Yes. When Chu Luiyue woke up again, it was already noon. Just as she moved, Rong Xiu walked over. You're up? Chu Luiyue nodded and stretched out her hand from under the blanket. Her jade-like slender arms were especially eye-catching under the red brocade quilt. Rong Xiu's eyes darkened, but he restrained himself and took a new set of clothes from the side. He bent down slightly, carefully and gently picked her up from the bed, and helped her put on her clothes. Even though her black hair hung down and covered most of her skin, a few red marks could still be faintly seen. Chu Luiyue's face was slightly red. She wanted to wear it herself, but she was half-hugged in someone's arms. She was sleepy and tired, so after struggling for a while, she gave up. She let him serve her from head to toe. After putting on her clothes, Rong Xiu poured another cup of tea and brought it to her mouth. Moisten my throat. Yesterday was really tiring for her. Chu Luiyue was half leaning against the headboard. Hearing this, her eyebrows twitched and she couldn't help but look up at him. These words, why did it feel so wrong? After taking a closer look, she began to feel indignant. Why was Rong Xiu so energetic when she was tormented half to death? Open your mouth. Rong Xiu seemed to know what she was thinking. He raised his eyebrows and pushed the teacup forward. White steam rose in spirals, enshrouding his noble and unparalleled eyes. Chu Luiyue was really thirsty, so she took his hand and took small sips. The temperature of the tea was just right. It was warm and moistened her throat. Chu Luiyue instantly felt much better. Good girl. Rong Xiao put the teacup back and asked, "Do you still want to sleep?" Chu Luiyue shook her head. She glanced outside. "You've already slept until now." It was rare for her to feel embarrassed. Rong Xiao smiled and comforted her. "Don't worry, there's no one in Yuntian Tower who needs you to bow to early in the morning. From now on, you're the princess consort and naturally the most honorable." Logically speaking, after the wedding, they were supposed to visit the clan leader together. However, the clan leader had been in a coma and hadn't woken up yet, so this process was naturally skipped. Chu Luiyue then felt more at ease. Rong Xiao looked at her and couldn't help but kiss her lips. However, his movements were very restrained. He only skimmed the surface of the water and didn't go any further. "Do you want to go out for a walk?" Hearing his suggestion, Chu Luiyue was surprised for a moment. However, on second thought, she didn't seem to have taken a closer look at the Yuntian Tower before. Most of the time she stayed at Duming Peak. She nodded. "Okay." Chang'e Mountain. Tani was reading. Wu Yao was still practicing boxing. Little Hachi was thinking about how to teach Yanqing a lesson. Yujio was still practicing his sword. Shifeng was watering the vegetable garden. 13 ran away early in the morning and was nowhere to be seen. Crack. A crisp cracking sound was heard. Yujio looked at the wooden sword in his hand gloomily. This was already the second sword he had used in the past month. He looked at Sunny. "Big brother, can I change to another sword? This wooden sword is too boring." Sunny didn't even raise his head. "No." As he spoke, he waved his sleeve and something flew out. Yujio hurriedly caught it. Only then did he realize that it was another wooden sword. However, this wooden sword seemed to be tougher than the previous one. Yujio looked at it for a while and finally couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, how many wooden swords did you prepare?" Sunny flipped a page. "It's enough for you." Fine. There was no end to this. Yujio resigned himself to fate and started again. Little Hachi suddenly stood up and hurriedly walked out. Shifeng looked up and asked, "Sister 8, where are you going?" Little Hachi glanced at him. Shifeng immediately felt a faint pain in his nose and hurriedly said, "Farewell, Sister 8. I wish Sister 8 a triumphant return." Little Hachi curled her lips into a smile and walked away seductively. After Wu Yao finished practicing, he wiped the sweat off his face. "Big brother, about what 13 asked yesterday. Have you already made a decision?" Sunny looked up. Wu Yao coughed. "What I mean is, it doesn't seem good to delay any longer." Sunny nodded and put away the book. "I'll go look for Master. You guys stay here." After saying that, he lifted his foot and walked outside. Digression, I think. I have a cold. I'll continue to update at 6 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. If I say I'll update more than 10 times, I'll definitely update more than 10 times. As for the bridal chamber, cough cough, after a few days of extra chapters, I'll take a break and study it again. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1820. The Yuntian Tower was much larger than Chu Luiyue had expected. In addition to the main island where Upsetting Peak was located, there were many small islands scattered around, forming a circle of stars around the moon. All the important figures in the Yuntian Tower lived on the main island, while the weaker ones lived on the small islands. At the same time, these small islands were also the key to connecting the 28 divisions of the Yuntian Tower. The members of the 28 divisions often had to reach the small islands before they could enter the main island. In general, the Yuntian Tower's defenses were extremely strict, and one had to go through many checkpoints to enter. If there was no one to receive them, it would be very difficult for outsiders to get here. "Is the clan leader at Upsetting Peak now?" Chu Luiyue asked. Rong Xiao nodded. "The side hall behind the sacrificial god temple is guarded by someone." "Then, did you find out how he fell unconscious?" Obviously, it was impossible for such a top-notch expert to have fainted for no reason. She only remembered that Yanqing had come to the academy to ask Rong Xiao to go back, saying that the clan leader had fallen unconscious and that the situation was urgent. When she saw Rong Xiao again, she did not have the time to ask about this. It was not until Rong Xiao mentioned it that she remembered this matter. At that moment, Rong Xiao briefly told Chu Luiyue the ins and outs of this matter, as well as the situation that day. "That's about it. Although we know who did it, we have no way to solve it in such a short time." Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. "So, the Black Demon Cave has been targeting you since a few years ago? Otherwise they would not have put in so much effort to plant spies." Rong Xiao smiled as a tacit admission. "Does it have anything to do with me?" Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. She knew that the Black Demon Cave had been targeting her all this time. As for the reason, it was naturally that zither score. But they did not seem to have a reason to target Rongxiu. The biggest possibility was that it had something to do with her. Rongxiu pinched her ear. Actually, it's nothing much. It's just that after you left, I personally paid a visit to the Black Demon Cave. Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched. That didn't sound like anything good. Is this the reason why the Black Demon Cave has been in seclusion for the past few years? Rongxiu pondered for a while. Half and half. At that time, I only seriously injured Mo Shiqian and took the lives of a few of his men, but nothing more. With their foundation, there was absolutely no need for them to go to such an extent. Now, it seemed that this was a choice they had made long ago. Chu Liyue's mouth twitched. Seriously injuring their sect leader and killing several of their trusted subordinates. That was the Black Demon Cave. Compared to the other first-rate families, they were not inferior in any way. Rongxiu spoke of such a shocking achievement in such a relaxed manner, and even disdained it. It was really, no wonder the people of the Black Demon Cave hated both of them now. This could be considered a deep hatred and no one would easily let it go. But, a few years ago, I remember that you were only an exalted god at that time. How did you win? Chu Liyue was even more puzzled about this point. To be precise, she never knew Rongxiu's true strength. He seemed to be, always able to erupt with combat power that was higher than his own realm. Rongxiu's expression changed slightly, and he raised his eyebrows and smiled. Actually, it was a coincidence. When I went, they seemed to be busy preparing something. Whether it was Mo Shiqian or his subordinates, their strength was limited to a certain extent, and they couldn't fully exert it. So, he paused. You should have heard that the cultivation method they cultivate is very strange. Although it can quickly improve one's realm and strength, it often brings about a lot of problems. Chu Liyue nodded in understanding. She had indeed heard about this long ago. It was also because of this that the Black Demon Cave had always been disliked by many families and clans in the world of divine ruins. They thought that their cultivation method was evil and went against the heavens. However, there were countless cultivators in this world who wanted to take shortcuts. So over the years, there had been a continuous stream of people joining the Black Demon Cave. This also caused their forces to always be very stable and difficult to be destroyed easily. In addition, in these years, the Black Demon Cave had taken the initiative to hide from the world, and everything was peaceful, so everyone gradually ignored them. But for Chu Liyue, she always had to be vigilant. The Black Demon Cave wanted her guqin score. They had done so in the past, and now, their desire was probably even stronger. According to Senior Ajing, his guqin score had been divided into 3 parts, and now she had 2 of them. Only the last part was missing to complete it. Of course, the people of the Black Demon Cave would not give up. Do you know where they are now? Chu Liyue asked. For some reason she felt that Rongxiu should know something. I can only roughly determine their location. As for their specific location, I really don't know. Rongxiu spread his hands and smiled frankly. However, there is one person who is close to them. If he can personally go, it won't be difficult to find them. Oh. Chu Liyue was rather curious. Rongxiu looked at her steadily. Senior Diwu. Senior Diwu was, of course, Diwu Xianxia. Chu Liyue was very surprised. She had thought of many possibilities, but this was the only one she had not expected. How could it be? Senior Diwu and the others have been trapped in the Red Moon Desert. Other than Debao, he and Senior Lan Shao can't even leave the Great Desolate Swamp. How could? And the reason why Debao could leave was because he had reconstructed his divine body. Rongxiu paused for a moment and said, Senior Diwu is indeed related to the Black Demon Cave. Chu Liyue was stunned for a while. She had indeed never heard them mention this before, Master. At this moment a familiar voice sounded. Chu Liyue turned around. Sinyi, why are you here? Sinyi cupped his hands and bowed to the 2 of them. Then he said, this subordinate has something to report to you. Chu Liyue was a little puzzled. At this time? What did Sinyi want to say to her? If it was something important he would have said it earlier. If it wasn't important, he wouldn't have come to report it at all. Rongxiu smiled. Then you guys chat first. I'll go see the chief. He had always been absolutely respectful to Chu Liyue. Sinyi was her subordinate. Even if they were in the Yuntian Tower, he would not interfere with her matters. Chu Liyue's heart warmed as she nodded. Rongxiu moved and quickly left. Only Chu Liyue and Sinyi were left here. Chu Liyue went straight to the point. Sinyi, what happened? Sinyi's expression was calm as an extremely faint light flashed across his narrow and indifferent eyes. Master, Sanson sent a message back some time ago saying that he wants to invite you back to Peach Blossom Cove. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1821. The Peach Blossom Cove was the place where Chu Luiyue had first met Rongxiu. It was an extremely special place. Even though it was part of the Divine Ruins world, the power of the Gate Realm was weak and the space was unstable. It would be destroyed by the spatial turbulence from time to time, and if one was not careful, they would lose their lives. It was extremely dangerous. Hence, there was no aristocratic family guarding that place. After all, it was more important to protect one's own life first. If one had to face the danger of death at all times and could not obtain any benefits, what was the point of going there? The Peach Blossom Cove was such a place. There were no heavenly treasures or earthly treasures there, nor were there any exceptional opportunities. There were only undulating mountain ranges and large patches of peach blossom forests. For some reason, the peach blossoms in the Peach Blossom Cove did not bloom or wither according to the season. Furthermore, they bloomed for a long time, and sometimes they would bloom for several years. Because of this, the world gave it a beautiful name, Peach Blossom Cove. However, the Peach Blossom Cove was not deserted. On the contrary, there were always many people there. This was because many people who came from outside the Divine Ruins world would choose to go to the Peach Blossom Cove when they had no other way to pass through the Gate Realm. Compared to other places, the Peach Blossom Cove had almost no barriers and was very easy to enter. Of course, if one made this decision, it did not mean that cultivators would be able to enter the Divine Ruins world smoothly. The Peach Blossom Cove was filled with danger. Of those who entered the Peach Blossom Cove, there was only a 1% chance of successfully walking out and officially becoming a person of the Divine Ruins world. However, even so, there were still waves of people who tried to enter. Furthermore, to the people of the Divine Ruins world, the Peach Blossom Cove was an absolute zone that no one was in charge of. It was very suitable for those who had nowhere else to go. There was abundant heaven and earth energy there, and logically speaking, it was very suitable for cultivation. However, because the space was unstable and no one was able to find a solution to this problem, the Peach Blossom Cove was gradually abandoned. In the Divine Ruins world, all the aristocratic families and clans that were able to develop needed a stable and powerful place to cultivate. The Peach Blossom Cove obviously did not meet this requirement. In short, the Peach Blossom Cove was very chaotic and dangerous. It was definitely a place where crooks mixed in with the honest folk. After Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu left that place, they had never returned. Why did Sanson go there? Chu Luiyue was extremely shocked. Why didn't you mention this before? Cini chuckled. This is his own choice. I advised him once. But you also know his temperament. For the past few years, he had spent most of his time in Peach Blossom Cove. From time to time, he would send letters back. Generally speaking, he lived a good life, so I let him be. I didn't mention it to you before because it happened to be your wedding. I thought it would be the same if I told you after your wedding. Besides, this matter is actually not that important. As for the specifics, you'll know when you read the letter. He took out a letter from his bosom and handed it over. It was a very thick letter. Chu Luiyue took the letter, opened it, and shook out several pieces of paper. At a cursory glance, it was filled with small, densely packed words. Chu Luiyue had a headache when he saw this. He couldn't help but say, "It's been so many years. Why hasn't he changed his nagging habit?" She had a unique way of communicating with the 13U clan and with each other. Generally speaking, he didn't write letters. Even if he really wanted to write, a few sentences would be enough. Only Sanson liked to write letters. He would write about everything big and small. His letters were never less than 5 pieces of paper. Cini smiled. He's always been like this. You know that. Chu Luiyue tidied up the letter and read it carefully. This was indeed Sanson's handwriting. As she read on, Chu Luiyue's expression changed, and she gradually became serious and serious. When she saw the last piece of paper, she finally gasped. What did Sanson do in Peach Blossom Cove? Cini raised his chin and smiled. Master, you personally taught Sanson how to calculate accounts. Can't you tell what he's doing? Of course Chu Luiyue could tell. The first half of the letter was very normal. It explained what he had eaten and drunk in the past month, how he missed Master and the 13U clan very much, etc. But towards the end it was a string of numbers. Chu Luiyue read it a second time in disbelief, only to discover that it was an account book. Sanson had actually opened a shop in Peach Blossom Cove, and this letter recorded the income and profits of the shop. Looking at the last part of the profit and the shocking numbers, Chu Luiyue's mind went blank for a moment. Did he open a shop or rob someone? Chu Luiyue could be considered a rich person now. She first received a lot of money from her ancestors, and then Rong Xiu sent her a universe ring. Her current net worth was considered pretty good in the entire Divine Ruins world. To be able to make her so shocked, it could be seen how terrifying the numbers on the letter were. The most infuriating thing was that Sansan seemed to know that Sun Yi and the others would be coming to Yuntian Tower soon to attend her wedding ceremony. He also knew that Sun Yi would show her this letter, so he specially wrote a paragraph for her at the end. The general meaning was that Peach Blossom Cove was too far away from Yuntian Tower, and he really couldn't get there in such a short period of time. In addition, the shop's business hasn't been very good recently, and he didn't earn much this month. He felt very guilty and planned to work harder during this period of time to make more profits. Finally, he invited her to go over and inspect it to show his determination to work hard. Looking at the last few sentences, Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched violently. This was still considered little? This was still considered as business not doing very well? What had Sansan experienced in the past few years in Peach Blossom Cove? Sansan said that since you've already decided to stay in the Divine Ruins world, you should buy some properties. He has already picked a few places and asked you to choose. Of course, if you fancy anything else, it's up to you. Sun Yi lowered his head slightly with a respectful attitude. Chu Luiyue held her forehead and did not speak for a long time. She had to slow down. The feeling of being hit by money made her feel a little dizzy. Digression: I really have a cold, so I'm writing slowly. But I'll continue to update today until 10 p.m. So it's better for everyone to read it together later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1822. Sansan's talent as a martial artist was very good, but he didn't care much about cultivation. Even if he had a whip behind him, he wasn't willing to sit there and cultivate. He liked doing business. To be precise, he liked to earn money and save money. When the other members of the 13 UU were cultivating, he was the only one holding an abacus and strolling around the streets and alleys of the imperial capital. At first, Chu Luiyue wanted to save him and pull him back on the right path, but later on she saw that it was useless, so she gave up. Moreover, she had handed over many of her businesses to Sansan to manage. But that was a few years ago in Tianling. Sansan was shrewd and had his own philosophy of life. No matter who he was with, he could become friends with them. Therefore, when the 13 UU scattered and went into exile, Chu Luiyue was very worried about the others, but she was very assured about Sansan. Even if he was in a desperate situation, he would always have a way to turn the situation around. It was also because of this that Chu Luiyue didn't ask about Sansan's situation in detail after settling down a little. In the end, she didn't expect that Sansan would give her such a big surprise. Looking at the letter in her hand, Chu Luiyue fell into deep thought. She knew very well what Sun Yi and the others were thinking. The so-called purchase of businesses was just a euphemism. Their real goal was to establish a force that truly belonged to them in the Divine Ruins world. This was also what Chu Luiyue had been thinking about all this time. Otherwise, she wouldn't have roped in Lin Qifei so early on. Marrying Rong Xiu and becoming the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower was naturally very good. However, such prosperity and stability were built on someone else's territory. Let's talk about the simplest problem. She could stay in the Yuntian Tower, but what about the others? Taizu, Imperial Father, the 13 UU, these people were the closest to her. They could always stay by her side, but there seemed to be no reason for them to stay in the Yuntian Tower. If she really wanted to gain a foothold in the Divine Ruins world, it was absolutely necessary to have her own power. She could still clearly remember the conversation she had overheard at the foot of Duming Peak. Actually, those people weren't the only ones who thought this way. After the wedding, those discussions disappeared. However, that was because she had Rong Xiu, her master, and more importantly, Yi Zhao and Mao Jin to support her. It wasn't because of herself. It was true that the current her was more talented than most cultivators, and she was also more capable of fighting. She had a bright future. However, in the Yuntian Tower, the UUU. Unless you can be the one standing at the top. But the UUU, the UU, S the UU. Taizu, the Taizu, is Taizu, Teat. However, even now he still didn't have the upper hand against those aristocratic families and clans. T-Tes, S. T. Sun Yi stood with his hands by his side, quietly waiting. After a while, Chu Luiyue put the letter away. Informed the 13U sect to head to Peach Blossom Cove together in 3 days. When Chu Luiyue returned to the sacrificial god temple, Rong Xiu was already waiting in the room. It was already evening and the light of the setting sun poured in through the window. Xiao was reclining on a rattan chair, holding a book in his hand. The warm orange light fell on his snow-white brocade robes, shining brilliantly. Hearing footsteps, he looked up and his thin lips curled. "You're back." Chu Luiyue leaned on the door frame and looked at him. Suddenly, a strange feeling arose in her heart. She had never felt this way before. When she stepped over the threshold, someone was already waiting in the room. When they saw her, they would smile and say, "You're back." It was as if the wind, rain, thunder, and snow outside were easily blocked by this sentence. For the first time she realized that she was married to Xiao. From now on they had one thing in common: home. Seeing that she didn't move, Xiao put down the book in his hand and walked over. "What's wrong? What are you thinking about that made you so lost in thought?" Chu Luiyue shook her head and walked over to hold his hand, smiling slightly. "I was thinking that it would have been better if I had married you earlier." Xiao raised his eyebrows, obviously pleased by this sentence. "How's the chief?" Chu Luiyue asked as she walked in. "Still the same. He has no intention of waking up, and has been relying on pills to prolong his life." Xiao's tone was calm. This was also within his expectations. Chu Luiyue nodded. Xiao and Bailey Jun didn't have a good relationship, so there was no need for him to care too much. Besides, judging from the things that happened to Bailey Jun before, his coma might not be a bad thing. Sometimes, living with a clear mind was a very painful thing. Chu Luiyue walked to the rattan chair and sat down. This rattan chair was very wide, and there was no problem for it to accommodate two people. Xiao took the opportunity to lie down next to her. The two of them stayed together in silence. There was no need for them to speak, but they could already feel each other's feelings. Chu Luiyue snuggled into his arms and then looked up at him. "Xiao, I want to go to Peach Blossom Dock in a few days." Xiao pushed the strands of hair in front of her forehead away and kissed her brows. "Oh, why do you suddenly think of this?" Chu Luiyue told him about Sansan and her plans. Although the situation in Peach Blossom Dock is complicated, since Sansan wrote a letter, she should be somewhat prepared. Generally speaking, if a couple had just gotten married and one of them proposed to go out and establish his own power, it would inevitably cause the other party to be dissatisfied. But Chu Luiyue didn't have this concern. She had nothing to hide from Xiao. She trusted Xiao and believed that Xiao would understand her thoughts. Sure enough, after hearing this, Xiao nodded. "Okay, I'll go with you." Chu Luiyue moved closer and smiled slyly. "Your Highness, aren't you worried that I'll establish my own power?" Xiao suddenly laughed softly and his chest shook. He held her face in his hands and kissed her lips. His voice was languid and lazy. "If you establish your own power, I'll take the initiative to marry into your family. What's wrong with that?" He wasn't even afraid of death, let alone other things. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1823. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Everyone was surprised to learn that Xiao and Chu Luiyue were planning to leave Yuntian Tower and head to Peach Blossom Cove. Xiao only said that Yuntian Tower was the place where they pledged their love to each other. Now that they were getting married, they wanted to go back and take a look. This explanation made sense, so no one continued to pursue the matter. However, why is Yanqing going too? Crack. Little Hachi broke the hairpin in her hand with a murderous look. Yujio silently put away his wooden sword, afraid that she would break his sword in a fit of anger. It hadn't even been a few days. Sister 8, since His Highness the Son of Saint is going with our master, he naturally has to bring someone with him. Yanqing is his confidant. Isn't that normal? Moreover, Peach Blossom Cove was a dangerous place with all kinds of people. It would be more convenient to bring someone with him. That's right. Compared to our master who brought so many people, His Highness the Son of Saint brought only Yanqing, which is already very little. Besides, I heard that Yanqing is quite powerful. Maybe he can be of help at a critical moment. Wu Yao asked as he packed his luggage. By the way, little Hachi, didn't you challenge him before? How was it? It was fine if he didn't mention this. Little Hachi was instantly enraged when she heard this. Her beautiful eyes were burning with anger. That Yanqing is not a man at all. Shi Fang, who was carefully putting away the vegetables he planted, finally raised his head and asked hesitantly, Sister 8? You tried? Chi. Little Hachi threw the broken hairpin in her hand out. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Shi Fang quickly dodged, picked up his vegetables and ran away. Little Hachi let out a long breath and snorted. I didn't fight with him that day. Originally she wanted to reason with him. Of course her reasoning was basically to fight. However, when she saw Yanqing, he refused to fight no matter what she said. From the beginning to the end, he had no intention of fighting with her. He didn't even bother to talk to her. In Yanqing's eyes, little Hachi was just a willful girl. He had always been cold-hearted, so of course he didn't want to argue with her. He also didn't want to waste his time. Unfortunately, in little Hachi's eyes, this was an open eye. Hence, this grudge was completely formed. Wu Yao wasn't of his. You are Master's person. If he hits you, what if you go back and complain to Master about it? In my opinion, this Yanqing is rather smart. Women were Tu's eyes of the most. Little Mina squinted his eyes dangerously, then suddenly revealed an enchanting smile. Anyway, there are plenty of opportunities along the way. Do you think I'm afraid of him? Sunny pushed open the door. Let's go. Peach Blossom Cove was thousands of miles away from the Yuntian Tower. They had to pass through several teleportation formations. Even if everything went smoothly, it would take at least 10 days. Their speed wasn't considered slow on the way. Chu Luiyue was initially worried about the 13 Yu. After all, traveling like this was very tiring. But soon she realized that she was overthinking. Even little 13, who had the lowest cultivation level, didn't fall behind. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. But after thinking about it, the 13 Yu had probably trained themselves after running around on their own for the past few years. Although these people's cultivation levels had increased, it wasn't obvious. But for some reason, Chu Luiyue still felt that their strength in all aspects seemed to have increased a lot. As they had been rushing, Chu Luiyue didn't ask in detail. About 13 days later, they finally arrived at Peach Blossom Cove. When they came out of the teleportation formation, they saw a desolate wasteland. On the wasteland, the ground was cracked and ravines crisscrossed. In front of them, a huge transparent light screen descended from the sky. On the other side of the light screen, there was a completely different scenery. There was a continuous mountain range and large patches of pink peach blossoms spread out. It was a scene full of vitality. But looking at it like this, it was hard to believe that it was a dangerous place. At this moment, Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu's group were not the only ones on the teleportation formation. This teleportation formation was very big. Although it had been there for a long time and there were traces of time, it was still working well. There were all kinds of people around the teleportation formation. At a rough glance, there were at least 100 people. When they appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of these people. This time, Chu Luiyue brought a few people from the 13 Yu, while Rong Xiu only brought Yanqing. However, there were already 9 people. Their sudden appearance here was quite eye-catching. Most importantly, the auras of this group of people were simply too extraordinary. Anyone with a bit of eyesight could tell that they were of noble birth and were definitely not ordinary people. This kind of temperament could only be cultivated by a top-notch aristocratic family. When those people's judgmental and suspicious gazes landed on her, Chu Luiyue was also quietly sizing up her surroundings. Among them, there were a few obscure and powerful auras that attracted her attention. A chill suddenly rose from the bottom of her feet. However, when Chu Luiyue wanted to take a closer look, that sense of danger disappeared. Those few gazes disappeared almost at the same time, and there was no way to investigate. Chu Luiyue looked around without batting an eyelid. However, the people around her quickly retracted their gazes. In fact, those who chose to come to Peach Blossom Cove were not simple people. There were all kinds of people arriving here every day. There were destitute aristocratic young masters and extremely vicious fugitives. There were beautiful girls and also old people who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Therefore, although the appearance of Chu Luiyue and the others attracted some people's attention, it was only for a short time. Everyone's first priority here was to enter Peach Blossom Cove and survive. Let's go. Rong Xiu raised his chin, held Chu Luiyue's hand and walked forward. The group of people followed. The teleportation formation was not far from the light screen, so it did not take them too long to reach the light screen. Chu Luiyue exhaled softly. She did not expect to come here again in her lifetime. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1824. The light screen of Peach Blossom Dock was naturally formed and completely enveloped it. On the other side was the gate of the Divine Ruins world. No one was in charge of guarding this place. Standing close, one could see the ripples on the light screen. When the breeze blew, one could even smell the faint fragrance of peach blossoms in the air. This aura was simply too familiar. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and exchanged glances with Rong Xiu. Then they stepped in hand. The moment they entered, 13 couldn't help but exclaim in shock. What rich energy of heaven and earth! After saying that, perhaps because he realized that he was making a fuss over nothing, 13 immediately covered his mouth and a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face. Chu Luiyue glanced at him with a smile. You're right. The energy here is indeed shockingly rich. It wasn't inferior even to the Yintian Tower. This was also the reason why so many people wanted to take this place for themselves at the very beginning. This Peach Blossom Dock was indeed a treasured place for cultivation. That is, if one ignored the turbulent space turbulence. It was precisely because of this that Peach Blossom Dock hadn't been truly taken over by any faction. In fact, no one had any plans for it anymore. This further proved how dangerous this place was. It could only be said that it was a pity. But this place is filled with danger. You must follow me and not be left behind. The few of them nodded. Chu Luiyue looked ahead. This was a very wide street. There were all kinds of shops on both sides of the street. Many people came and went on the street. It was very lively. A trace of surprise flashed past Chu Luiyue's eyes. This Peach Blossom Dock seemed to be a little different from before. When she came here in the past, the scene was far from being so peaceful. But now, what was going on? Chu Luiyue looked at Rongxiu and saw the same suspicion in his eyes. However, the two of them didn't say anything and tacitly swallowed their doubts. Sanyi, do you know where Sansan's shop is? Chu Luiyue turned and asked. Sanyi shook his head. He didn't mention this before. Moreover, they didn't have time to tell Sansan that they were coming over this time. He probably didn't know yet. Chu Luiyue was a little troubled. That's a little troublesome. The Peach Blossom Cove was huge. It would take a lot of effort to find a single person. Sanyi, why don't you and His Highness find a place to rest first? When we find him, we'll report to you. Chu Luiyue thought for a while. All right, take Wu Yao with you. She looked around her. We'll wait in the medicine shop. Perhaps he could also find out more about this place. Yes. Sanyi and Wu Yao responded, quickly leaving. Chu Luiyue and his group turned around and entered the medicine store. After entering, Chu Luiyue realized that the shop was much bigger than they had expected. From the outside, this place was just a small storefront, unremarkable. But when he came in, he realized that there was something else here. It was just that this shop seemed to have been here for a long time. There were many medicinal herbs and some pills in the shelves in the room. Sir, what would you like to see? A servant quickly came up to them. Seeing that they were well-dressed and well-spoken, his attitude became even more attentive. Rongxiu said, We're new here. We are new here, so we're just looking around. Hey? Then please take your time and watch. Rongxiu had an innate noble aura. The servant knew that he couldn't afford to offend him, so he waited obediently at the side. Chu Luiyue looked into the shelves and his eyes narrowed. I couldn't tell that you have so many good things here. Chu Luiyue said. Hearing that, a proud smile appeared on the servant's face. Of course. You don't know, but in the entire Peach Blossom Cove, no one can compare to us. His tone wasn't small. Chu Luiyue laughed. Oh, the Peach Blossom Cove is so big. Your small shop is the best? Seeing that she didn't believe him, the servant quickly explained, Madam, there's something you don't know. Our shop is from the past. The new shop is being renovated. We'll be moving in a few days. Moreover, we have more than one shop. We have several other shops in the Peach Blossom Cove. This made Chu Luiyue curious. When did the Peach Blossom Cove have such a medicinal herb shop? One must know that there were countless fights and killings in the Peach Blossom Cove every day. Therefore, the business of medicinal herbs and pills had always been very good. However, it was also because of this that the competition between the medicinal herb shops was very fierce. Some of the smaller shops had been squeezed out. Those who were able to stay were all capable. Even so, Chu Luiyue had never heard of the Peach Blossom Cove opening several medicinal herb shops. At least, when she came here in the past, there weren't any. When the servant heard her words, he smiled. Madam, you must have been here in the Peach Blossom Cove before, but you haven't been here for a long time, right? Chu Luiyue nodded. That's right. Actually, this shop of ours was only opened in the past year or so. It's normal that you don't know about it. Chu Luiyue was even more surprised. Her eyes swept across the medicinal herbs and pills on the display, and her mind was spinning. Many of the medicinal herbs placed here were heavenly treasures that were extremely difficult to find outside. As for those medicinal pills, their grades were not low either. Did you find all these on your own? The servant smiled and said, Yes. Our boss regularly delivers goods to a few shops every month, and they are all excellent items. Chu Luiyue nodded thoughtfully. Your boss is quite impressive. Digression, I took the medicine at night, but I was very sleepy. I fell asleep a few times while sitting. I guess I really can't write anymore. I'll stop here for today. Sorry everyone. I'll make up for what I owe in a few days after the update. Love you. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1825. The page boy was beaming with joy. Of course. You won't be able to find any store in the entire Peach Blossom Dock that has better medicinal herbs and elixirs than ours. Chu Luiyue believed his words a little. When she came here a few years ago, she did visit some medicinal herb stores. However, none of them could be compared to this store. She wondered who the boss behind this store was to be so generous. Although the energy of heaven and earth was abundant in Peach Blossom Dock, there were no decent heavenly treasures. There was a huge market for good medicinal herbs and elixirs, but it was also difficult to obtain them. On the one hand, one needed to have a channel to obtain these items. On the other hand, one needed to have enough power to ensure that these items could be delivered safely and sold smoothly. In the past, there were many outlaws in Peach Blossom Dock, and incidents of looting and robbing happened from time to time. One had to be strong enough to gain a foothold in Peach Blossom Dock. Chu Luiyue was a little curious about this boss. Are these medicinal herbs produced in Peach Blossom Dock? Rong Xiao suddenly asked. The page boy nodded. Yes. Moreover, they are all treasures of Qingshui Cliff. They are all top-notch. Chu Luiyue was surprised. Qingshui Cliff. She knew this place, but it was just an ordinary cliff. It was not eye-catching in Peach Blossom Dock. Why did it seem to have become a place of treasures now? Seeing her puzzled expression, the page boy explained. You may not know this, but 2 years ago the lightning tribulation in Peach Blossom Dock happened to strike Qingshui Cliff. Qingshui Cliff was split in half, and everyone discovered that there was a small space inside it. There were countless heavenly treasures growing in it. Now, Qingshui Cliff has become the most sought-after treasure in Peach Blossom Dock. At this point he chuckled. However, we went there early and gained an advantage. Now this store is finally up and running. There was a small space inside Qingshui Cliff, and there were countless heavenly treasures? Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiao looked at each other. This was really surprising. We haven't been here for a few years, so we really don't know much about this. However, why isn't there any news about such a big thing outside? Asked Chu Luiyue after some deliberation. The page boy revealed a mysterious expression. Madam, since you've been here before, how could you not know what kind of place the Peach Blossom Cove is? Even the people of the Peach Blossom Dock don't have enough of those heavenly treasures. How could they be willing to share them with outsiders? Only those who entered the Peach Blossom Cove would know about this. Chu Luiyue thought about it and agreed. The people of Peach Blossom Cove probably wanted to keep this news a secret forever so that no outsiders would know about it. Otherwise, it would attract more people to covet and fight for it, which wouldn't do them any good. In the past, the Peach Blossom Cove did not have any treasures, so most of the aristocratic families were not willing to come here. But if word of this got out, who knew what kind of people it would attract? At this moment, EXN walked in from outside the door. They were dressed in black robes with huge hoods covering almost half of their faces. Only their exceptionally pale cheeks, bright red lips, and sinister eyes could be seen. There was a strange pattern embroidered on the left side of their chests. 2 long swords intersected, reflecting a blood moon. Their murderous intent was awe-inspiring, and there was an inexplicable strangeness to it. There were a total of 4 people, and they were all dressed in the same way. When the page boy in the shop saw the arrival of these people, a trace of fear flashed across his eyes. Then he quickly put on a warm smile and hurried forward to welcome them. Why are you all so free today? Please forgive me for not welcoming you earlier. The man in the lead looked at him coldly. Of course, I'm here to retrieve something. The page boy revealed a troubled expression. Sir, there are still 3 days before the stipulated date. We're not ready yet. Why don't you wait for, swoosh? The man in the black robe did not say anything else. He directly drew the sword at his waist and stabbed it at the page boy's shoulder. The page boy was shocked and hurriedly dodged. However, he was still stabbed in the arm and blood immediately flowed out. This is something that our master wants. We can't delay it. Now are you ready? The man in the black robe's voice was cold. Several people behind him were also ready to take action. The page boy covered his wand tightly. His face was pale, but he still said, If you want to retrieve it now, it's okay. But we lack the spirit-melting herb. You know, this herb has always been in short supply. Not only this shop, but also other drugstores in the Peach Blossom Dock City don't have it now. The man in the black robe raised his chin. Then retrieve the rest first. As for the rest of the spirit-melting herb, let your boss send it to me in person 3 days later. The page boy's face was even paler. Yes, yes. Then he turned around and walked to the counter. He opened the door with his other uninjured arm, took out an interspatial ring, and then handed it over respectfully. Sir, they're all here. The man in the lead immediately stepped forward and took the interspatial ring. After checking it and confirming that there was only the spirit-melting herb inside, he put away the interspatial ring and gave the page boy a warning look. I'll let it go this time. The same thing happens next month. Be careful of your life. After that they turned around and left. When they walked out of the door, the man in the lead deliberately glanced at Chu Luiyue and others. Chu Luiyue clearly felt that the man's eyes lingered on her and Rong Xiao for a few seconds. She looked calm and pretended not to notice the man's killing intent. Rong Xiao took half a step forward, hugged her waist and blocked that person's view. See if there's anything you want to buy here. There was a short silence. Only then did those people finally leave. When they finally disappeared, the bloody and austere atmosphere faded a lot. The injured page boy forced a smile at them. Sir, I'm really sorry. Chu Luiyue winked at 13. 13 stepped forward to bandage the page boy's wound. The page boy was quite flattered and hurriedly said, Thank you, young master. It's just a small injury. It's not a big deal. As he spoke, he took out an elixir from the cabinet and took it. Then he took out the gauze. It was a pity that he was injured in the upper arm. He couldn't treat it with one hand. Let me help you, 13 said. Now the page boy couldn't refuse and had to thank him in a low voice. 13 was very skilled. After a while he helped the page boy treat the wound. Then he consciously returned to his position and stood there obediently. Chu Luiyue looked at him with appreciation and praised him casually. I didn't expect that 13 had studied it so well. Little Hachi flipped her hair and smiled charmingly. There's no other way. What makes a coincidence? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1826. 13 had been trained by his big brother every day, and had suffered countless injuries. In addition, if the others were injured and couldn't deal with it themselves, they would go to 13. As time passed, the proficiency level naturally appeared. Chu Luiyue, however, 13 was still very happy to be praised and his eyes shone brightly. Thank you. The servant walked over and bowed solemnly. Chu Luiyue shook his head. He remembered that the servant's actions were very familiar, and he even placed medicine and gauze on the counter. This wasn't the first time such a situation had happened. Who are those people? How can they be so domineering? Hearing this, the servant immediately revealed a nervous expression. He looked around and made sure that no one else heard it before he let out a sigh of relief and said bitterly, Madam, please don't say such things in the Peach Blossom Cove in the future. What words? Can't say that those people are domineering? Chu Luiyue laughed instead. It seemed that they were really domineering, and they couldn't even listen to others calling them domineering. If the people from the Moon Sword sect heard it, the consequences would be unimaginable. Ink Sword sect? Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows. Why haven't I heard of it before? The servant sighed deeply. It's a long story. Actually, the Black Sword sect had only arrived a year ago. At that time they only had a few dozen people, but each of them was very powerful, and they quickly became a famous existence in the Peach Blossom Cove. After that, they decided to settle down here and they kept recruiting more people to join them. In just a short year they became the most important existence in the Peach Blossom Cove. You've all seen how they do things just now. Our shop has to deliver some top-grade medicinal herbs and pills to them on time every month. If the items are not good enough or if they are not prepared in time, we will be punished by them. The servant's voice was very low. When he said this, he subconsciously looked around and his eyes were filled with panic and fear. It was obvious that the so-called Ink Sword sect had left a deep psychological shadow in their hearts. Chu Luiyue understood. Since it was a gift, of course it was free. Although Chu Luiyue did not know what kind of treasures were in the interspatial ring, given the standard of the shop, it must be some top treasures of heaven and earth. Lingxiao College's Medicine Wind Valley could only produce a small amount of spirit-melting grass in a year. However, these people wanted it every month. If they didn't prepare it in time, their boss would have to personally deliver it to them. This is really, who is in charge of the Black Sword sect? Rong Xiao suddenly asked. The manservant's eyes revealed a hint of confusion as he shook his head. We don't know either. Normally we would only see these lords, but as for their master, we have never seen him before. Furthermore, we do not know his identity. He has never stepped out of the Black Sword sect. It was not certain whether it was inside or not. At this point, the servant realized that he had misspoken and covered his mouth nervously, as if he was afraid that the people from the Black Sword sect would suddenly return. Chu Luiyue tilted his head and looked at Rongxiu. He smiled thoughtfully. I didn't expect that the Peach Blossom Dock would change so much in just a few years. The Black Sword sect was not simple. For many years, countless aristocratic families and clans had tried to take root here, but they all failed. However, this Black Sword sect, which had appeared out of nowhere, had actually become the local tyrant in the short span of a year or so. In this case, the entire Peach Blossom Dock is now theirs, isn't it? The manservant hesitated. That's not entirely true. After all, many people in the Peach Blossom Dock did not like the Black Sword sect's behavior. It was just that their resistance was a little weak. Chu Luiyue nodded knowingly. It was not that easy for the Black Sword sect to take over the Peach Blossom Dock. However, they had done what many aristocratic families and clans had failed to do. If they were given more time, no one could say for sure what the result would be. The manservant thought for a while and said, Esteemed guests. Esteemed guests, I don't know why you've come to the Peach Blossom Cove, but if you don't have any urgent matters, please leave quickly. I saw that the people from the Black Sword sect seem to be hostile towards you. It is really dangerous here. If they did not meet the people from the Black Sword sect, it would be fine. Or if they were very ordinary and would not attract their attention, so it would be safer. However, those people were not blind. They could tell that they had a strong background. The people from the Black Sword sect would definitely find trouble with them. Chu Luiyue smiled. She knew that the manservant had good intentions. However, they had just arrived. How could they just leave like this, mistress? A voice brimming with excitement suddenly came from behind. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. Her lips were already curled into a smile. She turned around and saw a chubby little fatty dressed in a gorgeous brocade robe running towards her at high speed. Although his body was round and smooth, his movements were very agile and nimble. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of them. Chu Luiyue could not help but smile. Sanson, I haven't seen you for a long time. How come you have become chubbier? When the chubby little boy heard this, he immediately rushed over excitedly. Mistress, you are finally here. Sanson has missed you so much. Rongxiu glanced at him. Sanson suddenly felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. His strong desire to live made him stop in his tracks. He stopped 3 steps away from Chu Luiyue. In the blink of an eye, he was smiling so widely that his eyes were squinted. He eagerly said to Rongxiu, Mistress, this must be your husband? His Highness the Holy Sun? He is truly a handsome man. He is a match made in heaven with you. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1827. Any normal person could tell that he was trying to curry favor. But when these words came out of his mouth, they sounded especially sincere. He first bowed solemnly to the two of them before he straightened his body and said to Chu Luiyue in admiration, Master, you're very talented. Master, I thought that there was no man in this world who was worthy of you. I didn't expect that I was so wrong. Rongxiu raised the corner of his mouth. This Sanson really lived up to his reputation. Although she knew his intentions, his tone was like a spring breeze. It seemed that she could feel his sincerity, which made people unconsciously convinced. He was indeed good at talking. No wonder he could do well in a place like Peach Blossom Dock. Hearing Sanson's words, Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched slightly. After not seeing him for a few years, his skills had really improved. She looked at Sanson up and down. It seems that you've been living a good life here. Look, your chin is about to show. Sanson chuckled and narrowed his small eyes with a shrewd light. He looked fair and soft, very amiable and likable. He really hadn't seen Chu Luiyue for a long time and missed her very much. Now that he saw her and heard her familiar teasing, he only felt happy. It's all because I know that Master and His Highness are going to get married. I'm so happy that I ate a few more bowls of rice. Chu Luiyue, it was the first time she heard someone talk about gluttony so confidently. Shifang nodded very seriously and said, Master, third brother is not picky about food. Every time he is in a good mood, he can eat a few more bowls of rice every meal. Unlike him, he was too picky about food and often didn't have enough to eat. Sanson's eyelids twitched. He had always been coarse and thick-skinned. He basically didn't take what others said to heart. But every time he opened his mouth, he would be ruthlessly stabbed. Shifang must be one of them. He looked at Shifang with a faint gaze. Shifang, there are many times when you don't have to speak. It was better to pretend to be mute than to say the wrong thing. Shifang shrank his neck and felt that it was dangerous, so he obediently responded. Boss? The servant at the side was already stunned and called out to Sanson in a daze. You? His eyes moved back and forth between Chu Luiyue and Sanson. His own boss actually called this lady Master. Chu Luiyue and the others also realized that something was wrong. Her eyes widened slightly. Sanson, this shop is yours? Sanson nodded calmly. Yeah. So Sanson was the boss. Chu Luiyue came back to his senses and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She really didn't expect. Xiao Zhao, why aren't you greeting master? Chu Luiyue was his master and he was the boss of these people. Naturally, Chu Luiyue was also the master of these people. The manservant hadn't recovered from the shock just now. Hearing this, he hurriedly responded. Yes. Greetings, master. As he spoke, he even wanted to kneel down and salute Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue raised his hand. You're injured. No need to be so polite. Only then did Sanson notice that Xiao Zhao's arm was wrapped in gauze, and a large patch of red had been wet on it. His face became serious. The people of Black Sword Sect are here again? The manservant nodded with a bitter face. Now in the Peach Blossom Dock, there was only one family who would dare to act so brazenly against them. They also said that you should come to them in person 3 days with the spirit melting grass. Sanson's face twitched. Chu Luiyue frowned and laughed angrily. So you're saying, just now those people snatched my things right in front of me? Digression, in a cold and dead body, 6 o'clock in the evening. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1828. Sensing his master's murderous intent, Sanson trembled all over. Having served his master for so long, he knew that what she hated the most was other people snatching her things away. Now it was happening right in front of her. Ahem, master, don't be so anxious. Calm down. I'll explain it to you in detail later. Sanson chuckled as he spoke. You've come all the way here. I'm sorry for not coming out to meet you. This place is too shabby. Why don't you and His Highness take a rest at my place? He had prepared the place long ago. After all his earnings were for his master. He just didn't expect that they would come so quickly. Chu Luiyue nodded. The situation at Peach Blossom Dock was more complicated than expected. They had to calm down and understand the situation before making a decision. Let's go to your place. After taking a few steps, she glanced at the servant beside her. He's injured. Let him rest at home for a few days. Sanson hurriedly said. Okay. He waved at the servant. Xiao Zhao, it's your fortune that master asked for it personally. You can go back and rest for the next few days. You'll be paid as usual. The servant was overjoyed and quickly thanked master. Sanson was nervous and happy at the same time. He led the way while rubbing his hands and asked expectantly. Master, you and His Highness have only been married for half a month. Why are you here so soon? Is it? He originally wanted to ask if his master also missed him in his heart. However, before he could finish his sentence, he saw Rongxio's cold smile from the corner of his eyes. Sanson swallowed her saliva with difficulty and tactfully swallowed the rest of her words. Ahem. Master, His Highness, this way please. After the group of people left, the servant stood at the door and looked at them for a long time. Regarding that master, the boss had mentioned it many times. He didn't expect that she was such a young lady. However, judging from her elegance and temperament, she was indeed not an ordinary person. The boss's master was indeed extraordinary. Thinking back to the scene of the people from the Black Sword Sect coming here to ask for something, the servant felt a little uneasy. This master doesn't seem to be easy to deal with. I wonder if I'll end up in trouble with the Black Sword Sect this time? Chu Luiyue and the others walked towards the city. Sanson followed beside him and kept nagging. Most of them were his experiences over the past few years, as well as some trivial matters that had happened recently. Chu Luiyue was already used to this, so he listened quietly. Yes, Sanson not only likes to write letters but also likes to talk. However, Sanson knew when to say what to say and what not to say. Just like now, he knew that this was the first time that Chu Luiyue and Rongxio had returned to Peach Blossom Dock after a few years. Therefore, he told Chu Luiyue about the changes in Peach Blossom Dock. Suddenly, he heard that he was just chatting, but in fact, the rules were clear and the main points were very clear. Chu Luiyue listened and nodded from time to time. Previously when they were in the shop the servant also said a lot, but it was all intermittent. Now that they heard Sanson's explanation they finally connected the series of events together. The few of them stood in front of the door and looked forward. The stone lion at the door was made of pure gold, and the steps were covered with a red velvet carpet. The servants in the mansion seemed to have gathered around and respectfully lined up on both sides. "Welcome back, master." It was a grand and imposing sight. Looking up, the pure gold plaque above did indeed have the two words "Yu Mansion" written on it. Chu Liwei looked at this dazzling and ostentatious mansion, and the corner of his mouth twitched again. Why is Sanson always able to exaggerate beyond my imagination? How is it? Master, do you like it? Sanson smiled until his eyes narrowed into slits. Time is of the essence, and I didn't have time to rehearse. Please forgive me. Chu Liwei. For a moment she really had the urge to run away. Seeing Chu Liwei's reaction, Sanson was a little unsure. Does Master not like it? But this was a mansion that he had specially spent a lot of effort to renovate. This welcoming ceremony was also carefully designed by him. This door is so grand. This welcome is so warm. Why doesn't Master like it? Sanson's eyes turned and he moved closer to Rongxiu. Your Highness, what do you think? She silently glanced at Rongxiu. Where did this inexplicable feeling of embarrassment come from? His Highness, the Holy Sun, was as gentle as jade. Dressed in white he looked like a banished immortal. Hearing this he gently nodded and his jade-like chin drew a perfect arc. Not bad. It seems that you're really concerned about your master. Sanson immediately beamed with joy. Your Highness is really amazing. It's good that you two like it, it's good that you like it. Chu Liwei. Rongxiu looked sideways at her, and his thin lips curled into a smile that almost rippled to the corners of his eyes. It seems that 13th Yu treats you extremely well. Chu Liwei, let's go in and take a look. As Rongxiu spoke, he had already pulled her hand and walked inside. Sanson followed him happily. Little Hachi glared fiercely at the two pure gold lions. Big brother, can I not go in? This place is so ugly. So ugly. Sun Yi's expression was indifferent. He straightened his clothes and followed directly. Sure. Sanson has a few other courtyards. You can go and take a look. Anyway, they were all of this standard. When little Hachi thought about how her eyes still had to be tortured a few more times, she suddenly felt that life was hopeless. If I really sleep in a place like this, my dress will be dull. As she spoke, she turned to leave. Stay at the inn, stay at the inn. Unexpectedly, as soon as she turned around, she saw a sturdy and muscular figure. She was caught off guard and directly bumped into him. Hey! Just as she was about to bump into the other party's arms, the figure in front of her suddenly stepped to the side and dodged. Dodged? Little Hachi's body fell uncontrollably to the ground. She widened her eyes. Is there something wrong with this person? If she fell to the ground like this, her reputation would be ruined. Just as she was thinking about how to fall more beautifully, a strong force suddenly came from the side. A broad and rough palm pulled her slender and smooth arm and pulled her back. With this force, little Hachi finally managed to stand firm. With this struggle, a string of broken jade beads on her wrists and ankles made a messy sound. She turned her head back in shock. Yen Qing had already let go of his hand. Little Hachi widened her big charming eyes. Yo, why were you dodging just now? It was as if he was afraid that she would do something. Yen Qing frowned. After all, the other party was a girl. If they bumped into each other, it would be really inappropriate with so many people watching. Was it wrong for him to take the initiative to step aside? Besides, he didn't let her fall. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 1829. However, looking at the angry eyes of the woman in front of him, her willowy eyebrows were raised, and her originally rose-like face was flushed with excitement and anger. She was indeed a beauty of the world. Yen Qing pondered in his heart. She seemed to be really angry. Then, I won't dodge next time. Standing directly opposite her, he could help her up in time. Little Hachi was stunned for a moment. She immediately stared at Yen Qing to make sure that he was not joking. He was actually saying this seriously. She gasped in disbelief. How could there be such a man in this world? He was straight, wooden, and extremely stupid. Why did he say that as if she couldn't wait to pounce on him again? Yen Qing was confused. Why did she seem to be even angrier? Didn't he just say what she wanted? He knew that this girl seemed to have a lot of hostility towards him, so in order to avoid conflicts, he had been patient several times along the way. But every time the other party didn't seem to appreciate it, and the conflict became more and more intense. Just you wait. Little Hachi turned around and left angrily. Her bright dress fluttered in the wind, like a light and enchanting butterfly, floating away. It was just that, she floated into the magnificent Yu mansion. Shifeng opened his mouth and wanted to remind her, but his nose hurt faintly so he gave up. Wu Yao coughed. Eighth sister is used to being straightforward. Lord Yanqing, please don't mind her. Yanqing shook his head. Although he didn't understand why the other party was angry, but if he offended the other party then he would give in. If he really couldn't then he could avoid it. What was the point of arguing with a little girl? Stepping into the mansion, Chu Luiyue was not surprised to see that there were festive red silk everywhere. Those who didn't know better would think that there was a big celebration here. This time even Rong Xiu's footsteps were stagnant for a moment. Chu Luiyue suffocated for a moment, and then waved his hand. Sanson, you're dressed too ostentatiously. Have you forgotten what I told you before? You should be humble and keep a low profile. Sanson readily accepted his advice. This time he quickly understood what Chu Luiyue meant. He immediately nodded in agreement. Master is wise. You see, I'm so happy that I'm confused by your arrival. He patted his head and waved at the person beside him. Man, quickly remove all of these. In the future, the entire Yu residence will follow the wishes of Master and His Highness. Everyone responded in unison. Yes. As soon as they finished speaking, they quickly took action. The efficiency was astonishing. Chu Luiyue exclaimed in surprise. She originally thought that these servants were ordinary people, but now she realized that their strength seemed to be not bad. Although he wasn't the best, his movements were agile and his steps were light. Although they couldn't be compared to the Yuntian Tower, overall they seemed to be quite well behaved. If there were more servants and their overall strength was higher, perhaps they wouldn't be worse than some of the third-class families. Sanson led them into the main hall. When he heard Chu Luiyue ask about the background of these servants, he laughed and said, Master, you're right. Master's guess is correct. They were all carefully selected by me. All of them have some talent and strength. Moreover, you can rest assured that I've done a detailed investigation on them before I recruited them. They are all clean and won't cause trouble. As for why he could find so many, naturally it was because there were people coming to the Peach Blossom Cove every day. Those who could enter the Peach Blossom Cove were not weak. Among them, those who caught his eye were all pretty good. Chu Luiyue looked at him from head to toe. I can see that a few of them seem to be stronger than you. You alone. How did you make them listen to you so obediently? Sanson chuckled. He knew that Chu Luiyue was saying that he didn't cultivate properly. He didn't take it to heart and explained. Of course, it's not enough to rely on my strength alone. However, you've forgotten that I've opened a pharmacy. In the Peach Blossom Cove, any slightly better heavenly treasures and elixirs were extremely expensive. Not everyone could afford them. If they stay here and become part of the Yu residence, they can get these things at a very low price. This is an opportunity that many can't even dream of. I see. The Peach Blossom Cove was a place where good and bad people mixed together. Who knew how many people wanted to make a name for themselves here and become a powerhouse? However, they had to be alive. If they were alive, everything would be fine. If they were dead, they would have nothing left. It was no wonder that Sanson was able to amass such a fortune in such a short time. Wasn't this business in the Peach Blossom Cove a huge profit? Then what about the Black Sword sect? If others wanted to get some good herbs from Sanson, they would have to pay with their own lives or large amounts of money. However, the people from the Black Sword sect demanded that they deliver a certain amount of herbs to them every month. If they delivered the herbs in advance and didn't prepare them properly, they would draw their swords and injure them. To be so arrogant to such an extent, it was simply inconceivable. Sanson's face turned bitter at the mention of this. He glanced at Sun Yi and said with a frown. Actually, I've mentioned this to Big Brother before. My pharmacy was doing well, but ever since the Black Sword sect appeared, they demanded that I give them offerings. I wasn't willing to do it at first, but those people... A hint of fear flashed through his eyes. Those people are quite capable and not easy to deal with. Helpless, I could only agree. Chu Luiyue leaned back in his chair and fell into deep thought. Sanson valued money very much. It was already very difficult to get a single cent from him, let alone take away so many expensive herbs. It was basically a blatant bloodletting. Even under such circumstances, Sanson still tolerated it. It could be seen how domineering the other party was. If he hadn't been forced, she believed that Sanson wouldn't have agreed to do it. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and asked casually, "Since they are so interested in your pharmacy, why didn't they just take it? Why did they have to go through you? Wouldn't that be too troublesome?" Digression. I'm running a fever. I'll try to write more. If I can't write more, I'll write in the title. Mobile users, please browse. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 1830. This was something that Chu Luiyue couldn't figure out. Looking at the way the Majin sect acted, it didn't seem like they would be kind. The truth was, although Sanson gave them a lot of valuable treasures every month and was bullied by them from time to time, Sanson was still living well. However, Sanson was indeed living well and earning a lot of money. This didn't make any sense. At the mention of this, Sanson's expression became a little strange. There was a rare conflicted look on his face as if he didn't know how to start. This is a long story." He glanced outside and after making sure that there were no outsiders he said, "Master, your highness, you know about Qingshui Cliff, right?" Chu Luiyue nodded. That Zhao said that Qingshui Cliff had been split open by Tianlei, and that there was a small space inside where countless treasures grew? Sanson sighed. "That's right. It's all because of Qingshui Cliff. When I first came here, I had been thinking about starting a small business, but I couldn't think of anything. Then one day I was in a bad mood and wanted to go to Qingshui Cliff to relax. In the end I ran into Tianlei. Fortunately, I reacted quickly and ran away in time, so Tianlei didn't hit me. However, Tianlei was tyrannical, and it stirred up the energy of heaven and earth around it. I couldn't get out at all, so I could only find a slightly safer place to hide. Tianlei exploded for most of the night, and it finally stopped when it was almost dawn. Originally, I wanted to leave as soon as possible after escaping with great difficulty. However, I inadvertently glanced and found that Qingshui Cliff had been split in half by Tianlei. There was a lake in the middle for some reason and it was full of water. I was curious and thought that since Tianlei had passed, there shouldn't be any danger, so I went over. Sanson rubbed his face as he said this. So, who knew that there really was another world in that place? I thought it was a lake, but it was actually a unique space where countless treasures were gathered. This was a windfall from the sky. He would usually pick up a copper coin when he saw it on the road, let alone when he saw such a scene. I was too excited and went over without thinking. However, as soon as I stretched out my hand, the barrier suddenly fluctuated and cut my palm. After that, I actually went in. Sanson sounded hesitant. Chu Luiyue understood something. Moreover, you became the master of that small space? Sanson scratched his head and answered in embarrassment. He looked up at Chu Luiyue. If I had known earlier, I would have left that small space for master no matter what. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh. That's enough. This is your fortuitous encounter and it should belong to you. What are you still hesitating for? How could she not know what kind of person Sanson was? He was probably overjoyed to have obtained such a small space by chance. Now that he said this, it was nothing more than a show of loyalty. Chu Luiyue knew his thoughts and methods like the back of his hand. He didn't even need to guess. Sanson laughed and rubbed his hands. Master knows me best. He did want to leave this thing for Master, but things like fortuitous encounters were hard to predict. Master, don't worry. Since this small space belongs to Sanson, it will naturally be yours in the future. Chu Luiyue touched his chin and smiled. That is to say, that small space is now completely under your control? Sanson shook his head. That's not entirely true. It's just that compared to others I can go in and out at will, and I can bring a few people with me. Those medicinal herbs, I personally brought people to pick them every time. This was enough. That small space was equivalent to a treasure house, and Sanson was the only person who held the key. Sanson lowered his voice. Actually, I later found out that the stronger I am, the more people I can bring with me. His strength was limited now and he could only bring a few people with him. But if his strength increased in the future, he might be able to bring hundreds of people with him. But the people of Majin sect don't know this. They only know that if I die, that small space will be sealed again and even collapse. So they don't dare to do anything to me. This was Sanson's confidence. Chu Luiyue finally understood. No wonder. If that was the case, it was not hard to understand why the relationship between Sanson and Majin sect was so strange. The people of Majin sect used Sanson to obtain these heavenly treasures. And Sanson also used Majin sect's power to gain a foothold here. Chu Luiyue stared at him. Sanson, this is asking a tiger for its skin. Sanson coughed and showed an aggrieved expression. Master, I don't have a choice. As he spoke, he hurriedly looked at Sanyi. Help me say something. Sanyi had barely spoken since he came in. Seeing that Sanson was urgently asking for help, he slowly spoke. Although it's dangerous, it's a win-win situation. No matter what, it's better than being trampled on. In any case, Sanson still had a trump card in his hand, and it was this trump card that could save his life. Wu Yao, Big Brother is right. Big Brother is right. 13, Big Brother is right. Shifeng, Big Brother is right. Master, third brother is now equivalent to a hen that can lay eggs. If the people of Majin sect had any brains, they wouldn't do something like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. The corners of Sanson's mouth twitched violently, and he looked at Shifeng with resentment. After they finished speaking, the room fell silent again. Chu Luiyue looked at little Hachi. At this moment, she was resting her chin on one hand and leaning against the chair listlessly, looking very listless. Chu Luiyue asked, Little Hachi, what do you think? Little Hachi didn't say anything. Little Hachi. Chu Luiyue called again. Little Hachi snapped out of her daze and looked up at Chu Luiyue. What? All right, Big Brother is right. Chu Luiyue. What's wrong with you? You look like your soul has left your body. Little Hachi wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, her gaze fell on Sanson. Nothing, I was just shocked by third brother's beauty. Digression. Have a meal and continue reading. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1831. Chu Luiyue looked at little Hachi thoughtfully. Did you quarrel with Yanqing again? Since when did I? Little Hachi immediately retorted and raised her voice. Chu Luiyue understood. They quarreled again. He didn't know why, but these two people always had conflicts when they were together. Little Hachi, on the other hand, was usually enchanting and charming. Other than the 13U sect, she basically spoke softly to men. Now that she was facing Yanqing, he didn't know what was wrong with her, but she was always very easily irritable. Logically speaking, Yanqing was such a big ice cube that could freeze people to death. If he didn't, he might keep going against little Hachi. He really didn't know how Yanqing had offended her. Chu Luiyue sipped his tea. Little Hachi, women who are often angry will age quickly. Little Hachi was dumbfounded and immediately touched her face. It's over, it's over. She had been angry for no reason recently. Could it be that she really had wrinkles? I'll go back and rest first. After leaving this sentence, little Hachi hurried out. What's a man? Beauty is more important. Chu Luiyue put down his teacup. It seemed that as time passed, some people's fatal weakness was still hit with one blow. How much do you know about the Ink Sword sect? Rong Xiu looked at Sanson. Have you seen the master they mentioned? Sanson's expression became much more serious and she shook her head. The Ink Sword sect has a mansion here, but it's extremely strictly guarded. Even I have to go through many checks every time I go there. Moreover, their master is very mysterious. I haven't seen him even once after so long. Every time I meet up with him, it's the same middle-aged man, Mo Yun. Mo Yun is the vice-sect leader of the Ink Sword sect. He has a very high position in the Ink Sword sect and is basically in charge of all the affairs of the Ink Sword sect. Mo Yun? Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes as a dark light flashed across his eyes. Did you think of something? Chu Luiyue asked. Rong Xiu paused and shook his head. It's just a guess, but nothing is certain yet. It wouldn't be too late to wait until he understood more about it. Chu Luiyue knew that he had never fought a battle that he had no confidence in. He would never make rash decisions about things that he still had doubts about, so he didn't continue to ask. What she wanted to know the most was why the Black Sword sect had spent so much effort on the Peach Blossom Cove. Take this place for himself? But even if there was a Qingshui cliff here, it wasn't theirs. What could they gain by wasting time here? Just for those medicinal herbs and pills? Not to that extent. For the abundant heaven and earth energy here? It wasn't worth it. In order to absorb more cultivators and expand his strength? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue asked again. After the people from Black Sword sect came, did the number of people in the sect increase by a lot? Sanson thought for a moment and said, to be honest, not by a lot. Anyone who wants to enter the Black Sword sect has to go through a month of examination. Only those who passed the test would be able to stay. Those who failed would be eliminated. From what I know, the elimination rate is very shocking. But even so, there are still people who want to go. This was to be expected. After all, the Black Sword sect was the strongest faction in the Peach Blossom Cove. If one could become a member of the Black Sword sect, their safety would be guaranteed, and they would be able to stay in the Peach Blossom Cove. Those who came from outside the Divine Ruins world desperately wanted to enter the Black Sword sect. Those desperados who had come here for various reasons naturally wanted to seize this opportunity. Actually, not everyone wants to go to the Black Sword sect. Many of them even have grudges with them. But until now, there hasn't been a single faction that can go against the Black Sword sect. Xianxia explained. This was also why he was still in contact with the Black Sword sect. It was because life was forcing him. Chu Liyue fell into deep thought. After hearing Xianxia's explanation, she had a rough understanding of the current situation in the Peach Blossom Cove, including the Black Sword sect. But the more she knew, the more she found this matter to be tricky. She originally wanted to come here to take a look at Xianxia's situation and prepare to establish her own faction. But now, because of the small space at Qingshui Cliff, Xianxia was being watched by the people of the Black Sword sect. Cini looked at Xianxia calmly. Xianxia, didn't you say that you've already chosen a few places for Master to choose? Right. I almost forgot about that. Cini's words reminded Xianxia. He quickly took out a few pieces of paper and handed them over. Master, the places listed here are the places I mentioned earlier. I've already written down their strengths and weaknesses. If there's anything you're not clear about, feel free to ask me. Chu Liyue took the papers and looked through them carefully. These places were mostly places in the Divine Ruins world that were rich in heaven and earth energy. Some were ownerless and some were. The ownerless places were more dangerous, and the ownerless places required more money to buy them from the aristocratic families. In short, each place had its own strengths and weaknesses. After Chu Liyue finished looking through them, he handed them over to Rongxiu. Take a look. Rongxiu looked through them quickly and finished looking through them in a short while. He looked up at Chu Liyue and smiled. Which one do you like? A moment of hesitation flashed across Chu Liyue's face. Rongxiu's smile deepened. With a turn of his wrist, he returned the papers to Xianxia. Xianxia hurriedly caught it, and his eyes swept over the two of them. Master, Your Highness, which one do you like the most? There was a moment of silence. Rongxiu knocked on the table with his hand and smiled faintly. She doesn't like any of these. Xianxia was shocked. She doesn't like any of them? These were all carefully selected by him. Why didn't the master like any of them? Chu Liyue deliberated over her words. Xianxia, in fact, it's not that you didn't choose a good place, but these are not suitable. If it's just a place to live, there's no problem. But if you want to use it for other things, it's not enough. She had her own plan. These places were obviously not enough to meet her requirements. But, with my current financial resources, I can only choose these. Xianxia was embarrassed. Of course, he knew that these were not the best. But he really had no choice. Chu Liyue smiled and comforted him. Don't worry, I don't mean to blame you. After all, this is a big deal. You have to think carefully. You can't rush it. Maybe there will be better ones later. Xianxia had to nod. By the way, 3 days later you will go to deliver the spirit melting grass in person. What are you going to do? Xianxia looked even more embarrassed. The output of the spirit melting grass is very small. 3 days later, I'm afraid I can only give them half of what they need. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Those who knew that Chu Liyue was Xianxia's master, other than the people in the U residence and the few medicine shops, there was practically no one else. In addition, most of the people in the Peach Blossom Cove were busy with their own matters and rarely paid attention to others. Naturally, they did not care about this matter. This was also good. Chu Liyue and the others were happy to have peace and quiet. The night was cold as water. There were no stars and no moon. A lantern swayed gently in the wind. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Chu Liyue stood by the window and seemed to be able to smell the faint fragrance of peach blossoms in the air. For a moment she almost thought that it was still a few years ago. It was as if nothing had changed. Rongxiu walked behind her and hugged her waist, gently resting his chin on her shoulder. They were silent, but there was a tacit understanding. Chu Liyue suddenly laughed. Rongxiu, don't you think it's amazing? When we first met in the Peach Blossom Cove, I really did not expect that one day we would be together and become husband and wife. Moreover, we will return here again. The scenery here did not change as if it was the same as before. However, many places had indeed changed. Rongxiu's thin lips curved slightly. Oh. From then on, I had already decided on you. From the first time, from the first sight. These were enough for him to chase after her for a lifetime. No matter how high the mountains were or how wide the sea was, no matter the sky or the underworld. Chu Luiyue felt as if something had gushed out from her heart, making her feel warm all over. She did not know how many lifetimes of luck she had to accumulate to meet someone whose soul was compatible with hers. Yet he still doted on her like a pearl. Compared to him, the torture and suffering she had experienced in the past seemed to have become much lighter. Peach Blossom Cove has changed a lot in the past few years. Chu Luiyue murmured. I didn't expect that an ordinary Xianxia cliff would hide such a secret. Sanson is really lucky. Peach Blossom Cove was surrounded by mountains and countless peaks. Only Xianxia cliff was hit by Tianlei, and Sanson happened to catch up. Rong Xiu's voice was lazy and low. He smiled faintly. If we go to those mountains to take a look now, we might encounter some opportunities. Who knows? Chu Luiyue laughed. How can it be that easy? After so many years, didn't Xianxia cliff only appear in Peach Blossom Cove? Although she also wanted to have such an opportunity, this kind of thing was not easy to come by. Rong Xiu hugged her slender waist, and it was so soft that it was unbelievably soft. He said slowly. But it is not a coincidence that Xianxia cliff appeared. Chu Luiyue paused and immediately turned to look at Rong Xiu. The two of them were very close to each other. With this movement, her soft lips gently brushed across his cheek. It was as if a spark had ignited. Rong Xiu's breathing changed slightly. But he still restrained himself and only kissed her gently on the lips. She was exhausted from the long journey. She really could not stand the torture. Chu Luiyue blushed slightly, but she quickly withdrew her thoughts. She pulled back a little and put some distance between the two of them. In this way she could clearly see Rong Xiu's eyes. Those phoenix eyes were clear and deep, as if they could contain everything, but also as if they could only contain her. Do you mean that the Peach Blossom Dock has more treasures than just this one? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and asked. What do you think? Chu Luiyue fell into deep thought. Rong Xiu's words made sense. Since such an opportunity had appeared at the bottom of Xianxia cliff, it didn't mean that there weren't any other places. These mountain ranges were connected to each other. Perhaps there were other possibilities. However, other than Xianxia cliff, Peach Blossom Cove hasn't made any big moves in all these years, nor have any amazing treasures appeared. If the Peach Blossom Dock really had the potential to be excavated, then why did so many aristocratic families and clans give up on this place? Men die for wealth and birds die for food. They didn't come either because there was nothing here, or even if there was something here, it wasn't tempting enough for them. Of course, there was another possibility. They didn't even know what was here. Rong Xiu kissed her forehead and said in a low voice with a hint of laughter. Have you forgotten that your black shield was obtained from Peach Blossom Dock? Digression, I can't take it anymore, I'm going to sleep. Mobile users on the debt account, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 1833. Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. She had really forgotten about this matter. Rong Xiu was right. She had found the black shield somewhere in Peach Blossom Cove. She had thought that it was very sturdy and convenient to use. But later she gradually realized that this thing seemed to be more useful than she had expected. No, it was more than that. Until now, Chu Luiyue had no idea what the limit of the black shield was. She had been through a lot of trouble, many of which had been life-threatening. But as long as she used the black shield, she had never failed. She had been injured mainly because her body was too weak. Even if the black shield had reduced most of the force, some of it would still reach her. But that did not mean that the black shield was not good. Because from the beginning to the end, it had never been truly shattered. Even the most serious injury only left a few scratches on the surface. Broken? No way. Chu Luiyue had asked Taizu about the black shield, but even the knowledgeable Taizu could not tell her. Gradually, Chu Luiyue put this matter aside for the time being. She had even forgotten that the black shield was from Peach Blossom Cove. If that's the case, Peach Blossom Cove is not as ordinary as it looks, Chu Luiyue pondered. Whether it was the black shield or Xianxia cliff, they were not opportunities that could be found in ordinary places. Could it be? A white light flashed in Chu Luiyue's mind. She grabbed Rong Xiu's hand and asked, Is the reason why the people from the Black Sword sector staying here because they've discovered something? Rong Xiu paused. It's hard to say. After all, they had not fought with them directly. They could not be sure what the situation was. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. Let's wait for Sanson to come back from Majin sect. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Sanson took the spirit melting grass and headed to the Black Sword sect alone. The Black Sword sect was heavily guarded, and no outsiders were allowed to enter or leave as they pleased. Therefore, every time she went to deliver something, Sanson had to go alone and was never allowed to bring anyone with her. Fortunately, it was not the first time he had done this. In addition, Chu Luiyue had helped him to replenish the spirit melting grass, so everyone was not too worried. They were all busy with their own things in the mansion. When Sin Yi came to look for Chu Luiyue, she was looking at the prescription. "Master, I plan to bring 13 out for a trip." Chu Luiyue looked up from his book. "Today? Is something the matter?" A faint smile appeared on Sin Yi's face. "No, 13 is preparing to break through. I was afraid that the courtyard would be damaged, so I wanted to take him out and find a spacious place." Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Little 13 was about to break through to the 7th rank. According to his talent, the soul-gazing tribulation of this stage would most likely cause quite a commotion. Although the courtyard was large, it could not withstand the bombardment of Tianlei. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. "I'll go with you." She also wanted to see how much 13's talent and strength had improved. Sin Yi did not seem surprised by her decision and nodded lightly. "Yes." The thing that Peach Blossom Cove did not lack the most was mountains. Chu Luiyue and Sin Yi brought 13 to a remote and quiet mountain. Rong Xiao and Yin Qing seemed to be discussing something, so they did not follow. Chu Luiyue looked around. She had not been here much. Although she and Rong Xiao had wandered around Peach Blossom Cove for a long time, Peach Blossom Cove was too big, and they could not go to every place. Therefore this time her feelings were very different. "Master, big brother, I'll go now." Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. "Don't be nervous. We're all here." Her calm and gentle eyes made 13 feel much more at ease. His lips curled into a smile as he turned around and headed to the mountain peak. Chu Luiyue and Sin Yi floated in the air and stayed around the mountain. 13 landed lightly on the top of the mountain. The young man who was smoking was tall and slender, looking slightly frail. The mountain wind blew, lifting the corners of his clothes. He took a deep breath and sat down cross-legged. He closed his eyes and focused, beginning to absorb the energy of heaven and earth around him. Soon, the rich energy began to surge toward him. Dark clouds gathered in the sky. Faint sounds of wind and thunder could be heard. Chu Luiyue looked over. Behind the layers of clouds, silver heavenly lightning started to appear indistinctly. 13 also had a Tianjing Yuan meridian. She wondered how many Tianlei he could summon this time. The number of heavenly thunders attracted during the divine tribulation was, to a large extent, an indication of the level of strength a cultivator could reach in the future. Therefore, all cultivators paid special attention to this stage. They didn't have to wait for long. Boom! A bolt of heavenly lightning struck down. The energy around the mountain surged. Chu Luiyue waved her hand and set up a barrier in front of her, silently blocking the violent energy outside. The power of Tianlei was no longer a threat to her. 13's figure was shrouded by the dazzling white light, almost unable to be seen clearly. However, Chu Luiyue wasn't worried. "Sin Yi, with 13's talent, how many Tianlei do you think he can summon?" Sin Yi could be considered half a master to 13. He should be the most knowledgeable about this. Sin Yi pondered for a moment. "Probably, boom." At this moment, a loud sound came from the other side of the sky. Chu Luiyue and Sin Yi both turned to look. They didn't know when, but that side had been covered by thick dark clouds. And looking at the situation, it seemed that Tianlei was about to fall. "There's someone else cultivating here?" Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? It was still morning. Moreover, in order to let 13 focus on breaking through, they specially ran a long distance and made sure that this place was remote and quiet before choosing this place. They actually encountered someone like this? And they were also breaking through? Soon, Chu Luiyue discovered that the other party's formation was even grander than theirs. "It seems that a cultivator of a high level is breaking through," Chu Luiyue murmured. Boom! Tianlei fell from the sky like a silver snake. It struck down fiercely. However, this Tianlei didn't fall on the peaks of the mountains below. Instead, it seemed to fall in the valleys of those mountains. Boom! Then a second strike followed. Chu Luiyue was slightly surprised. The speed at which this Tianlei fell seemed to be a little abnormally fast. Sin Yi stared at the sky not far away and frowned slightly. Seeing his expression, Chu Luiyue asked, "Is there something wrong?" Sin Yi nodded and pointed in that direction. "Master, look carefully. The places where the two bolts of heavenly lightning fell are not the same. Mobile users, please browse and read." A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1834. Hearing his words, Chu Luiyue looked over again. This time she found something fishy. You're right. Although the two Tianlei are both falling toward the canyon in the middle of the mountains, their exact locations are indeed different. Because they were not far away and the two of them had amazing eyesight, they could see very clearly. At first glance they would not notice anything wrong. But if they looked carefully they could easily see the problem. However, the distance between the two Tianlei doesn't seem to be far. Chu Luiyue frowned. It's as if, boom. Before she could finish her sentence, the third bolt of lightning struck immediately after. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and laughed. How interesting. These three Tianlei seemed to be striking the same place, but the locations where they landed were different. If a normal cultivator was breaking through, or a refiner was triggering the Tianlei to refine a divine artifact, these Tianlei should have landed in the same place. How could they be so scattered? It was really strange. Don't worry about that side for now. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and looked at 13 again. At this moment he had already survived the first Tianlei. The second Tianlei was surging in the clouds. Looking at his situation, he should be doing well. No matter what the situation was over there, she would not allow 13 to be disturbed. The distance between the two sides was really close. They were both triggering the Tianlei. Chu Luiyue only hoped that the people over there could do their own things peacefully. Soon, the second Tianlei of the Ascension Tribulation that belonged to 13 fell with a bang. This time, the power contained in the Tianlei was clearly much stronger than the first one. The edge of the mountain had already been charred black. Fortunately, 13's condition had always been good and he was as steady as a rock. Chu Luiyue felt a little more at ease. All these years, 13 had been following Chenyi and the others. Although he could not officially become a disciple, he was not delayed. Chenyi was extremely smart. He knew how to guide them, and that was the best way. This was also why, although the 13 were together all year round, their interests and specialties were all different. Their personalities and so on were also different. Chu Luiyue was very confident in Chenyi. Looking at 13's situation now, she was even more certain of this point. The movement over there seems to be expanding. Chenyi suddenly said. Chu Luiyue looked sideways and frowned. In just a short while, a lot of Tianlei had gathered. At a rough glance, there were at least 4 or 5 streaks of lightning shuttling through the clouds like silver snakes. And almost without any hesitation, they struck down. Chu Luiyue stared at it for a while and felt even more confused. The reason for that was because the heavenly lightnings were still striking down in the same manner as before. She had almost never had she seen such a situation. However, what worried her the most was that the dark clouds over there were surging even more violently and had even begun to spread to the surroundings. If they continued to come this way, they would definitely affect 13. Just as Chu Luiyue was pondering how to solve this problem, a black figure suddenly flew out of the valley, rapidly heading in Chu Luiyue and Chenyi's direction. Seeing the other party's clothes, Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. Dressed in black robes, a huge hood nearly covering half of his face. Embroidered on the left side of his chest was a picture of 2 intersecting swords, reflecting the bloody moon. Ink sword sex people. Sensing the biting cold killing intent from the other party, Chu Luiyue's body instantly tensed up. This person did not come with good intentions. Chenyi narrowed his eyes slightly, calmly clenching his fists in his sleeves. In the blink of an eye, the black-clothed person was already in front of them. Shwa. He directly drew the saber at his waist. Who are you? How dare you trespass into Inksword Sect's mountain region? You really don't know the meaning of death. Chu Luiyue frowned. Inksword Sect's mountain region? This is Inksword Sect's territory? Why didn't she know? This place could practically be considered a desolate mountain range. How did it mysteriously become their territory? If it really was theirs, why wasn't there even a barrier or a sign? On the way here just now, she didn't even see a single person in charge of guarding it. We've already been here for so long. If this really was your territory, you should have stopped us from the start, shouldn't you? Chu Luiyue countered with a question. The other party clearly didn't expect Chu Luiyue to be so gutsy. After hearing Inksword Sect's name, he still dared to refute so arrogantly. He was momentarily at a loss for words. This indeed wasn't their territory. It was just that he suddenly sensed someone here just now, so he came over to chase them away. His gaze became even more sinister, like a blade scraping past Chu Luiyue and Chenyi. You two are newcomers? Anyone who had stayed in Peach Blossom Cove for a period of time wouldn't speak to him with such an attitude. Only those newcomers who didn't know anything would be so tactless. Chu Liyue's gaze turned slightly cold. The other party's gaze and tone made her extremely unhappy. What, newcomers don't have the right to stay here? Chu Liyue's red lips curled into a cold arc. We'll mind our own business and live in harmony. Isn't that good? Why do you have to be so ruthless? As you can see, our child is in the midst of a breakthrough. At such a time you must not disturb him. Whoever dared to interrupt 13's cultivation, she wouldn't let them off easily. Hearing her words, the aura of the black-robed man instantly turned sinister. The surrounding temperature seemed to drop by a few degrees, causing one to unconsciously feel a chill in their hearts. Chu Liyue also began to circulate the force in her body. But then his gaze landed on 13. Gazing at God's tribulation, he muttered in a low voice. Looks like your talent isn't bad. For some reason, his low voice made Chu Liyue suddenly feel an intense uneasiness in her heart. That gaze of his, she frowned. Just as she was about to ask him to leave, that man suddenly pointed the tip of his sword at 13. There was a trace of excitement and bloodthirstiness in his sinister voice. Hand him over and I'll let you off today. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1835. Chu Liyue took a moment to understand what he was saying. At that moment she almost laughed out loud. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said just now. Could you please repeat it? The black-robed man glanced at her coldly and said word by word, I said, hand him over to my ink sword sect. This was not a question, nor was it a negotiation. It was an order. Chu Liyue was still smiling, but her eyes were much colder. Interesting. It had only been 3 days since she came to the Peach Blossom dock, but she had already met the ink sword sect twice. The first time they snatched something from her. This time they actually snatched someone from her. 13 is my man. He grew up with me. I'm afraid I can't agree to this request. Chu Liyue said coldly. The black-robed man looked at her in surprise, as if he was shocked that she would say such a thing. Do you know how glorious it is to be able to enter my ink sword sect? Countless people in the Peach Blossom dock have tried their best, but they couldn't enter my ink sword sect. Now that we have taken the initiative to ask for him, it is his and your supreme glory. Don't be muddle-headed. This warning sounded like a joke in Chu Liyue's ears. They wanted 13, wasn't it because of 13's talent? Just a moment ago he was still overbearing and filled with killing intent, looking as if he could not wait to execute them on the spot. However, after seeing 13 he changed the topic, saying something about handing 13 over to him. He even said that it was their great fortune to be able to enter the Black Sword sect. Bah! How shameless! Chu Liyue hid her thoughts and smiled politely. I'm sorry, I still refuse. The atmosphere at the scene instantly froze. The air seemed to be frozen and the coldness was bone-piercing. The black-robed man was so angry that he laughed. Are you sure? I've already said it twice. Didn't you hear me clearly? Chu Liyue smiled, but there was a trace of impatience in her eyes. She hadn't settled the score of robbing her, and now he wanted to rob her again. This was too much. The black-robed man probably hadn't met someone with such an unyielding attitude in a long time, and someone who dared to talk to him like this. For a moment he was so angry that he couldn't say a word. Rumble. Almost at the same time, the Tianlei of both sides descended from the sky. Moreover, because the forces on both sides were growing larger and larger, the distance between the two large dark clouds was rapidly shrinking. Soon, the two forces would come into contact and entangle with each other. This was definitely not a good thing. Training, especially when summoning Tianlei and preparing for a breakthrough, required absolute focus. At this time, any external influence could very likely lead to the failure of the breakthrough. This was what Chu Liyue was worried about from the beginning. She raised her head to take a look, and her expression darkened. When the black-robed man saw this, he didn't seem worried at all. Instead he sneered. How can the Tianlei summoned by the divine tribulation be compared to the Tianlei we summoned? If you really choose to fight us head-on, the only one who will suffer in the end will be you. Whether it was the number of Tianlei or the tyrannical strength, 13's side couldn't be compared to the other side. If they really collided, it was tantamount to hitting a rock with an egg. The other side might not be affected much, but for 13 it was very likely that his breakthrough would fail. Hearing this, Chu Liyue's mouth suddenly curved into a smile. Oh, is that so? Digression. Not only did she have a cold and a fever, but her period was also kicking the door. She was completely useless. Continued at 6 p.m. I am Iron Man Wong February. Mobile users, Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1836. She didn't want to get entangled with the other party. After all, she still didn't know what kind of background the Black Sword sect had. But if they went too far, then they couldn't blame her. I won't hand him over to you. As for Tianlei, third brother. At this moment, a rough man's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Liyue's eyes narrowed as he saw another person flying out of the canyon. What are you dawdling over there for? Why aren't you back yet? That man didn't come over and only shouted from afar. From his tone, it seemed that he had a higher status than the man in front of Chu Liyue and the others. The man called third brother hurriedly explained, Second brother, someone is breaking through here. He's summoning the divine tribulation. He's just a rank 6 warrior. Why hasn't he been dealt with after so long? The second brother seemed to be very dissatisfied with this. Third brother wanted to explain that he had wasted some time because he had taken a fancy to the young man who was about to break through and had good talent. Enough. We can't care so much now. Come back immediately. We don't have enough manpower here. What time was it now? How could he care about that? Third brother could only respond, yes. He raised his foot and was about to move when he turned around and gave Chu Liyue a deep look. Since you're not willing, wait to collect that kid's corpse later. When all of Tianlei was activated, how would there be any room for that kid to break through? At that time, only death would await him. That kid was indeed a good seedling. If he was handed over, he might be able to get a lot of rewards. What a pity. A trace of unwillingness and resentment flashed across third brother's eyes as he left in a flash. Not long after, his figure disappeared behind the mountains. Tianlei was still descending. However, his movements didn't hesitate at all. In fact, he was in a hurry. Those who didn't know would think that he was rushing to do some mission. Chu Liyue's heart lit up. Cini, did that man say that they don't have enough manpower? Cini nodded. That's right. This was even more strange. What was going on over there? What was going on over there? How could someone say that they didn't have enough manpower when facing so many people from Tianlei? Chu Liyue frowned and fell into deep thought. At this moment, the edges of the two dark clouds in the sky had begun to touch each other. The commotion caused by 13's side could not be compared to the other side. At a glance, it was only 1/10 of the other party's size. Under such circumstances, the power of Tianlei that 13 summoned would most likely be devoured by the other party. This was also why the man had warned Chu Liyue before he left. This was a battle without any suspense to begin with. Chu Liyue looked at 13. He was already undergoing the tempering of the 4th Tianlei. From the flickering light, one could vaguely see that his clothes were torn and stained with blood. Clearly, this was already a somewhat difficult process for him. If he were to be affected by external forces at this time, rumble. In the distance, Tianlei was descending on an even more terrifying scale. Thick dark clouds surged madly, covering the sky and the sun. The energy of heaven and earth gradually began to riot. Above 13's head, the 5th Tianlei in the clouds had already appeared, but it did not descend for a long time. Under the influence of that terrifying external force, the Tianlei was faintly showing signs of being absorbed. This could not continue. Chu Liyue made up his mind. When the other party's clouds covered and devoured 13's Tianlei, it would be too late. Cini took a step forward. Master, why don't I look after 13? Chu Liyue's expression was calm. His pitch-black eyes seemed to flash with a biting cold light. Whoosh! A snow-white long sword suddenly appeared in her hand. The next moment, she tapped the ground with the tip of her foot, and her slender figure instantly shot into the sky like an arrow leaving the bow. Her movements were light, her dress fluttering and her long hair dancing with the wind. In this dark heaven and earth, she was like a blazing green bird, diving into the surging black clouds without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared. Sun Yi frowned slightly but soon relaxed. He did not move. A short silence. Immediately after, a sword light suddenly split open the thick layer of clouds. Scarlet Heaven Sword, break. Chu Liyue's figure appeared once again. The clouds that had originally begun to merge were actually split apart by her. Then the dark clouds, with her as the center, surged in two different directions. Sword energy overflowed and surged over. Cini raised his head and looked at the red figure floating in the sky. He narrowed his eyes slightly. Her figure was slightly thin and frail. Behind her was the sky full of dark clouds, and in front of her was the boundless sword light. She had become the only color in this world. Sun Yi's tightly clenched hands slowly relaxed. A faint and long smile appeared in his usually calm eyes. Master is still master after all. The commotion caused by Chu Liyue's sword also attracted the attention of the people from Black Sword sect. What's going on over there? Second brother raised his eyes to take a look, his thick brows tightly knitted together. That woman actually split the clouds apart? When he saw the scene clearly, there was finally a trace of disbelief in his voice. Beside him, third brother, who had just returned, was also stunned. That's not right. This was different from what he had imagined. They had attracted so much attention from Tianlei. Logically speaking, the other party should not be able to fight them head-on. But now that woman, where did that woman come from? Second brother was still staring at the scene as he asked anxiously. I don't know. Sensing his aura turn cold and severe, third brother's heart trembled, and he unconsciously felt a lot more guilty. Smack. A loud slap sounded. Third brother staggered from the slap. The thick smell of blood instantly spread between his lips. But he did not dare to dodge or even cry out in pain. Second brother, calm down. Second brother sneered. You don't know? Then what were you doing over there for so long? Third brother's face flushed red and he was speechless. He did not care about the other party at all, so he did not even ask for their names or origins. From beginning to end he only cared about wrangling with them. They thought they were dead for sure this time. Who knew that woman's strength was actually so powerful? Second brother looked over again and saw that the clouds in the sky had been completely separated. There were painful roars and groans coming from the canyon below. Second brother glanced indifferently, suppressing the urge to go over and take a look. Continue. The most important thing now was still this matter. As for that woman's identity, they could just go back and investigate. Third brother was overjoyed that he had escaped a calamity. He hurriedly replied. Yes. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1837. The sword chi split the clouds in the sky into two. An invisible force surged out, blocking all the external forces that tried to stop it. Chu Liyue nimbly sheathed her sword and landed lightly. Sun Yi bowed slightly. Master, you're indeed extraordinary. Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows and glanced at him. I know that if you fight, you might not be inferior to me. In that case, there's no need to say anything more. Sun Yi insisted. What Sun Yi said is the truth. Chu Liyue smiled and couldn't be bothered with him. Sun Yi had followed her for many years and usually didn't talk much. It was rare for him to praise her like this, so Chu Liyue felt very pleased. She weighed the Scarlet Heaven sword in her hand. As her strength continued to increase, she became more and more proficient in using the Scarlet Heaven sword. She raised her head to take a look. In the sky, the sword chi she left behind had already formed a huge barrier. This should be enough to last for a while. Chu Liyue exhaled softly. This feeling of gradually becoming stronger, it was really satisfying. Finally, the fifth Tianlei, without the influence of other forces, fell with a loud bang. Ink Sword Sect. Sanson came out from the side door. Beside him was a middle-aged man. Sanson stood still, cupped his hands respectfully and said with a smile. Deputy Sect Master, it's already my great honor that you came to send me off personally. Please stay. Mo Yun's figure was tall and sturdy. Just by standing there, he exuded an imposing aura. Hearing this, he laughed. Third boss, you're too polite. This old man knows that we've been in a hurry recently, and it's been quite difficult for you. Especially this spirit melting grass, it's not something that can be obtained just because you want it. Third boss, please forgive my subordinates for offending you earlier. Sanson hurriedly said. I don't dare. I can be where I am today all because of Ink Sword Sect. Originally, it was my servants who didn't know the rules, so they made a scene. I didn't expect to alarm you. Mo Yun patted Sanson's shoulder and laughed. Third boss, don't worry. You're an important guest of Ink Sword Sect. How can they not be punished for hurting your men? As he spoke, he turned his head slightly. Man. Present the compensation to third boss. The servants who were following behind him at a distance hurriedly came forward and carried the wooden box that had been prepared earlier. Sanson glanced at it. In fact, he had noticed it since the beginning. He just didn't expect that this was actually an apology gift to him. Just as he was about to reject her, he felt the hand on his shoulder tighten. Third boss, this represents the sincerity and willingness of my Black Sword Sect to continue working with you. You must definitely accept it. Sanson's round face trembled slightly. Then it narrowed its eyes and smiled. It is my honor. Since that's the case, then this San won't refuse. After he finished speaking, he took the wooden box. Mo Yun was obviously very satisfied with his answer and withdrew his hand. Third boss is a straightforward person. It just so happens that there is something I need to discuss with you. Recently, the Black Sword sect has been recruiting a lot of disciples, so the consumption of medicinal herbs is extremely high. So, from next month onwards, the amount will be doubled. Third boss, is there any problem? Sanson's eyelids twitched fiercely. He knew that there must be a demon behind this abnormality. Mo Yun had always been extremely arrogant towards him. He wished that his eyes could grow on top of his head. When had he ever spoken to him in such a tone? Moreover, the Black Sword sect had hurt the people in his medicine shop several times in the past, but they had never expressed anything, let alone solemnly apologizing and making amends. So, they were waiting to ruthlessly rip him off. Double, how much money would that be? Sanson's heart was throbbing painfully and bleeding. He said somewhat awkwardly, Vice sect leader, it is my honor to contribute my meager strength to the Black Sword sect. But this double, I really can't afford it. Mo Yun's smile faded a little. Third boss, do you still feel embarrassed? Sanson choked and began to curse in his heart. It was more than embarrassed. It was simply too difficult. This time, just the spirit melting grass, he had to borrow some from his master to gather all of it. In the future it would be doubled. Where was he going to get it? But he naturally didn't dare to say these words. His smile became even more humble. Vice sect leader, please don't misunderstand. Sanson is really wholeheartedly loyal to you. It's just that twice is a little too much. Even if you empty out Sanson's fortune, I really don't have it. You see, if it's really so easy to take it out, there wouldn't be such a commotion 2 days ago, right? Mo Yun stared at him until Sanson was sweating all over. Only then did he let go of his mouth. I'll add half of it. This should be fine, right? Sanson's heart was still bleeding, but he also knew that there was no room for negotiation. He could only smile and agree. All right. Don't worry, in the future, Sanson will definitely go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. Only then did Mo Yun's expression become better. After exhorting a few more words, he finally let Sanson leave. Sanson carried the wooden box and returned to the Yu mansion alone. Third brother, you're back? As soon as he entered the door, Yu came up to him. How is it, are you all right? After returning to his own place and seeing his own people, Sanson's hanging heart finally calmed down a lot. Yu, why are you here? Were you waiting for me? Yu nodded. Master and Big Brother went out and told me to wait for you here.